tomorrow we could see things differently, but the way it's going right now, we better put it on hold. Is your 17th message in 17 minutes? I can't reply no more, my head's not in it. Don't mean to shut you down, but I'ma put down this phone. So patiently, I'm listening. I know that you've been up waiting for me. Alright, I'll tell you, before you go lay down, unlock the door. As soon as I get home, I'll be all yours. Let me come inside, and we can reconcile. I'm cold steel stainless. My glass half full. Always said don't suffer no fools. Serpents daydream. I bite, you call me lovely. Got a sweet tooth. Gonna get the sugar from you. When they say I'm a machine gun, I take it as a compliment. Honey, you should know I can be a weapon.
Good afternoon and welcome in to the SPL. It's Saturday. We're in week 2, and it's Finch and Mifflin that are going to be bringing you into this big day worth of action. And we've really had, I think, Mifflin, a lot of really good sets up until now. The SPL has absolutely delivered in terms of competitive, really close matches where you don't know who's going to be winning it, and upsets and all that stuff too. So today is absolutely going to continue on that, I'm thinking.
I do too, and today we finally get to see Sanguine get tested against one of these top-tier teams. I'm really excited to see that. This squad has been performing so well as a unit that I'm excited to see how they can compete against the best.
I think you're right. It's going to be a test for both these teams, right? This is the schedule. You can see it is going to be the Space Station Sanguine matchup first. The Knights and Obey will battle later. It's going to be telling because for Space Station, there's a chance for them to come out and go, okay, we are that top dog that everyone thinks. I think a lot of people have them as kind of the one overall seed right now. If they can take care of Sanguine, they kind of confirm that. On the other side, Sanguine, after trouncing Obey, are on the up, right? They can prove that they are this sort of up-and-coming team if they're competitive up against Sanguine, if they can give them a run for their money, or obviously, even if they win. There's a lot of fan support behind this team from what I saw in terms of their predictions. Here are the standings right now. Radiance, our only undefeated squad with 2 wins. Sanguine and Space Station have not lost yet either, though that will change shortly after this one. And Miff, I think that you're so right. This is going to be a telling match for both these squads.
It really will be. I mean, beating out Obey right now, maybe not the best look for Sanguine, but it certainly is a great way to start off the
Sure.
season. But now that they're competing against SSG, who I've been hailing as the kings of the SPL, I'm really excited to see how these guys are going to perform.
And so much of what makes this Space Station team strong, Myth, it's Raffer in the support role for me, man. This guy just continually finds ways to get it done. He plays with different picks than what other people plays with. He's always right there providing the peel when you need it. He's not unwilling to die for his team as long as that means the setup is there for the squad as well. And then you've got guys who are pretty good at the game. I don't know, like Cherio, right? Like Dardes, like Vote. Those guys are the ones following up off of Raffer once he finds that 6 setup. And then obviously Nika does what he does from the solo lane too. This roster, to me, it does center around Raffer, but everyone on it is so individually talented. It's what makes them so hard to stop.
It really is. I mean, no matter who you are, if you've got Vote, Dardes, and Nika at your back, it's gonna go well. And Raffer and Cherio aren't sleeping either. These guys are going to be carrying the squad. So these are 5 just incredibly talented individual players who have been playing together for an incredibly long time as well. So even as a unit, we see that they're going to perform well. Whereas SSG, or Sanguine rather, is just... I think they're the best team. They work the best together, even if they individually aren't the most talented mechanical players. Their teamwork, their ability to play off of each other is at such a high level that I think it elevates them. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Is that it? Or I don't know how to word things.
Yeah, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right?
There it is.
And I think that you're exactly right on that point, right? I don't know that you would take Sanguine over a lot of other people individually, like in their roles, but together they do sort of form this Voltron, right? As a unit. And for me, it starts with Shinto, where I think it starts with the support on the side of Space Station. For Sanguine, for me, man, I think it starts out of that middle lane. This guy is a killer. He plays just about whatever it is that he wants, and he's always able to get into the right positions. But it's been his synergy with Panatom as well, I think, that's been really hard for other teams to try and match up. What is it? Is it just this teamwork, or what is it that makes the Sanguine team so hard for other squads to lock down?
I think it is truly the fact that they play so well off of each other as a team. I mean, if one of them gets picked out, they know how to peel out their squad, and they know how to cut losses immediately. Their communication core is incredibly good. The second they get a lead, they know how to play off of it as well. Everything that Sanguine does is so impressive from a strategic standpoint.
And everyone that's playing in the SPL is hungry, right? Everyone wants to win, but Sanguine have a different kind of hunger. I think they're from the bottom looking up, right? They've never been there before. Everyone else has been kind of at that top tier, been competitive for a world's title before, and Sanguine, this is kind of their first ride, right? I think that is the sort of energy, the momentum that this team brings in when they play. If you all are friends with these guys, hop on Smite. They do not stop playing. I don't know when they sleep. I do not know when they eat. They are just constantly grinding Smite.
I mean, yeah, me and you have queued up some 2 a.m. casuals together and got slammed by the entirety of Sanguine in a casual 3 a.m. Smite queue. It blows my mind, and it's got to be a great confidence booster for them and a great team-building exercise. I'm glad that you brought up their hunger. I think I can relate to them a little bit on that level, having come from console and then moving to PC. Maybe similar to this going from Latam coming over to NA and the SPL. They have that anger. They feel like they need to prove themselves, and I think that does drive them a lot.
Yeah, a bit of a chip on their shoulder, but it's kind of hard for us to speak exactly to what these guys are feeling. So instead, I sat down with Rongu and I asked him to have a chance to hear some of his thoughts. I'm here with Rongu, support for Sanguine. And Rongu, man, first things first, congrats on the big win in week 1. I'm sure that meant a lot to you guys. What does it mean to be able to start your whole real SPL careers really off on such a clean note?
Yeah, thank you. It started us a lot because we thought like it was going to be like bad because we were like, okay, this is our first match because we knew we were doing well in scrims, but we didn't know if we were doing well for SPL. So it was a good start. Hopefully we can just keep going and we can get better results next time.
And you guys are going to be going up against Space Station here for your next set, Rongu. And specifically, you're going to be matching up against a Raffer, one of the best supports ever, maybe just one of the best players ever. How are you going to have to match his performance this set? Like, how important is it going to be for you to try and equal out his value?
Yeah, I think Raffer is probably one of the best supports right now. He's good. As I told you, we have Scream probably every team except for Obey, but I think we pretty much have won at least half of our Screams, so I think we can do pretty well. We just have to do the same thing we're doing Screams in SPL, and I think we're gonna do well.
Do you guys have any strategies for trying to limit Raffer or Dardez in particular, or do you guys just come in the same way that you approach every team?
Yeah, I think we have a plan for Raffer. Probably not a cheeky strat, but I think we can stop his things.
You got to try and slow that guy down some way, so I totally get
Yeah.
it. Well, you guys have such a supportive fan base, I feel like. Whenever you all are playing, even when you're in the SML, like, chat suddenly gets flooded with all this, like, Sanguine support and stuff. How much it mean for you guys to have such a loyal sort of following that always shows up for you guys and make sure they're supporting?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much we are here because all the support, all the fans, our families, the LATAM guys are always there cheering for us. So this is an awesome opportunity for us because we know we are representing Latin America and not a team.
Well, I think you all are representing them well. Everyone talks so much about you guys' grind and passion for the game. Well, good luck in your set, Rongu. I appreciate you taking some time here to talk with us. I'm looking forward to getting to see you play.
Thank you.
Always great to get a chance to hear from Rongu, and he's looking pretty good as well in that Maxonomic chair, huh? Remember, you all can look just as good as Rongu if you head to needforseatusa.com. Make sure you're using code SMITEMAX. That's $50 off, as well as you can get that customized with that savings that you got. So if you want to put the goat on the back, if you want to put your carry on there, whatever it is that you need, you can put that on that Maxonomic seat. And I think the important thing that we heard them talking about there a little bit Mifflin, was how much these teams are really grinding the game. That's why I love to get a chance to hear from Rongu. Whenever I talk to anybody else about this team behind the scenes, they say that they're actually kind of smacking in scrims. Now, throughout Smite's history, doing super successful in scrims isn't always the best thing, but I don't know. For Sanguine, it feels a bit different to me. I think these other teams haven't figured them out yet.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't think I've ever won a scrim in my life, full stop, but it works out for me. But hearing that Sanguine is going to perform as well as they do in scrims here is going to be very impressive. Winning 50% of your scrims is not easy, especially considering some of those scrim nights can go for 3, 4, 5 hours straight. It's not easy to keep your level of play at that high tier, but it's hard for me to keep my competitive integrity right now. I mean, I'm rooting for Sanguine simply because
Sure.
every single one of the guys is so lovable, so humble. That interview really made me a fan.
Dude, I'm glad to hear it, man. And when you talk to them, you can just tell these guys are passionate about playing. The problem is, there's as much passion on the other side, man. Space Station might be a bit more aloof, but these guys want to win at the end of the day. So I promise there's no deficit of that coming from the Space Station boys either. As we are absolutely into these picks and bans. And I thought some of the changes that we saw happen in that bonus balance patch might mean that maybe we wouldn't see quite as much of these gods, but we're seeing a lot of the same ones taken away. Yamoja, Camazotz, the Persephone. They're not letting these gods through right now, Mifflin. But because of this hell ban that Space Station made, Merlin comes through. And I've already highlighted how important I think Shinto is. And you're giving him possibly just one of the best mages in the game right now. That is scary.
Also a mage that he has shown time and time again that he's completely comfortable on. Merlin out of the mid lane is going to be able to control fights once they come his way, as well as opens up the door for early objectives, simply off the back of how much objective burn that he does have. However, SSG, not willing to give up too much, picks up that Uller in the long lane, which might be able to deter some of those early Gold Furies.
It's so funny. I feel like you and I spent a long time talking about these two gods in particular yesterday when we were watching the set that happened yesterday. And we're talking about how Jormungandr just feels like the kind of god you pick if you just want to be safe in lane. Almost like Wukong if he did more, right? There's just no chance that Jorm's really going to die in most cases. And then this Uller is just pressure in a box, right? You just pick Uller, you put him in lane, and you have the pressure in that lane. You always have kill potential against just about any matchup over there. So I love these first picks for Space Station, especially now that you add this Raiden onto it. This is going to be an aggressive comp.
Yeah, how did you word that Uller pick to me yesterday? If you think you're the better hunter, you're just going to win no matter what. I think that maybe that confidence might come into play here. However, Jingwei is going to bring a certain level of safety, despite the fact if Uller does pick up 3-4 kills. We saw Snoopy as well yesterday picking that Jingwei for that safety. If you die, you're back in lane instantly.
That's right. Snoopy was getting a bit bodied in lane, and he didn't really fall behind, did he? He just floated right back in using that rapid reincarnation, so not bad at all for the Jingwei. But Space Station seem really worried about these healers, don't they? Even with the Merlin already picked, they do come back and ban this Aphrodite as well, perhaps worried that that might get taken over to the solo lane, as now that Kuzenbo being hovered here for Space Station, they've already got the Yorm, so this has to be for Raffer in the support role if he wants to take this.
Yeah, Raffer has shown that he is comfortable on Kuzenbo. That god allows you to play as far up and as out of position as you want. Not many characters in Smite can literally punish you for hitting him. So maybe Raffer is going to play a little bit more aggressive than we're used to seeing, tank up some of those ultimates and reflect as much damage as humanly possible.
Man, you say it a lot nicer on stream. Whenever we're playing, you say, punish for playing the game correctly, I see. It makes you miserable. So yeah, that's what Kuzenbo does. Maybe makes you feel bad about hitting some of your stuff. Sanguine on the other side, pick up the Cirquette and the King Arthur, so the healers did not end up quite coming through. Maybe that Space Station we're worried about, but maybe that's because they banned them all away. Instead, it should be that King Arthur over there for Nika, and then the Cirquette in the jungle instead for Cheerio. This is something that he does like to play.
He does. I'm looking at SSG's comp, and it's so strong. They've got every phase of the game covered. Hunbot should be able to get them through just about anything that they need to in the early game, making sure that Raijin reaches the late. Raijin's early game a little bit weaker than most mages, especially compared to Merlin. However, around level 20, he's a late game artillery strike from long range. Anything that walks towards him is going to fall, and I think Hunbots brings just enough out of the jungle to get him there.
Yeah, sorry if I had a mild panic attack there. I just can't believe Unbots gets to get 10th picked. That god's so strong right now. The Fear No Evil, a potent tool over there on the side for Space Station trying to take into this next game. But Mifflin, based on these drafts, I can already tell this is going to be an aggressive back and forth matchup here between these two teams. It's Sanguine up against Space Station. Game number 1 about to start.
Much appreciated, Finch. Dolson and Aggro on the call for game number 1 between Sanguine and SSG. And in Aggro, I got to admit, I mean, my heart is being pulled 2 different directions in this one. My brain is being pulled in 2 different directions in this one between Sanguine, SSG. I couldn't tell you who I think's going to win. I couldn't tell you who I want to win this one. I think by every metric, this is going to be a very close matchup.
I think the word test is perfect. I know that both Mifflin and Finch were using it quite a bit during that pregame desk, and I think that it fits perfectly because this is the first test for both of these teams. It feels like with the higher end of competition. I mean, both these teams played against Obey and Renegades so far, and while those teams, specifically Renegades, looked a little bit better, a little bit ahead of schedule, so to speak, I think that it's fair to say that this is a higher level than what we expected from those first 2 sets.
I agree, and I think some questions will be answered, of course, about both of these two teams and maybe where they stand. And this is a battle to stay up to pace with Radiant, who are 2-0 up to this point in the SPL. Both of these two teams 1-0, so trying to tie up there for first. And one thing I noted in picks and bans was the continued presence of Merlin versus Raijin in the mid lane, but it's Raijin in the long lane this time, and he's going to fall for first blood as Netrioid has found the opening.
Vote just did not respect that blink in from Rongyu. Rafford already used his blink to try and zone Netrioid away from that ghost minion and delay him getting level 2. But that's just synergy right there between Rongyu and Netrioid. Rongyu blinks in, hits the fracture. Vote, you have to pre-beads that. You cannot afford to get hit by that stun, because then if you get knocked up, you're just dead. And we've got a Boosh Beads alert for first blood, but it's not going to work even if you beads. Really, frankly, when that knockup starts, I think that you need to pre-beads that stun coming from the fracture, or else you're just going to take too much damage. Sitting at only level 1 means that you don't have that jump to get away.
And that's just so tough, especially with kind of how Finch was looking at it, where you want this Kuzumbo to be aggressive, but instead SSG under duress again. Votus already uses disengaged Netrioid in for the second time in 2 minutes. Second blood over to Sanguine.
Man, Netrioid just knew exactly where Vote's out was. The only way Vote gets out there is maybe if he dashes to the right and gets into the jungle. But this is so smart by Sanguine, what they're doing right now. They did this after First Blood as well. They're holding the wave. They're not pushing this wave that you normally see teams push because they want to go get their jungle and go get their buffs and that kind of stuff. But at that point, nothing is up for them to take anyways past the Alpha Harpy, and that takes so long, it's not really worth that much gold. Let's hold the wave and then bring Vote to a point where he has to be basically on our tower line again, and we've just got way more range than he does. He gets hit by a full CC chain, Netrioid lands the Persistent Gust. As soon as he lands from that, he gets knocked up by the Horus, and then Netrioid just reads exactly where Vote's going to dash back towards his tower, and now no way Vote can step up at all. He's sitting on Boots 1, and Netrioid has already proven that he just has the range to compete with that level of extra movement speed.
Yeah, perfect synergy, perfect wave control as well from Sanguine on the back of 2 kills 2 minutes into this game. I feel like whatever it's been, even if it was just yesterday, we've kind of seen this return to this traditional duo lane in the long lane, and now get maybe a glimpse at what this lane will look like for the next few minutes. Vote can't even move himself forward. But I also feel like we've seen a return to a lot of kills as well, kind of stemming out of this long lane, and maybe even one more. No beads, no dash, no problem. Netrioid moves in for his 3rd kill of the game, keeping pace with a kill a minute.
Yeah, frankly, I just don't think players are used to this level anymore, this style of 2-on-2, and it's been so long since it's been 2-on-2 in this duo lane. It's been so long since you really have to worry about kill pressure pre-5 anywhere but the mid lane. You just can't step up to that at all. And Raffer leaves because he's probably thinking, well, I can't save you. If you get all into like that, how am I going to save you? But Raffer kind of needs to be there just to try and do something. And I like this quite a bit. Put Vote in the mid lane and just take him away from this CC chain. But now Panatom's here.
Wait, yeah, now he just gets blinked on in the mid lane, and he's going to dash out. But Rongyu's there waiting, Vote taken low. Panatom dashes through, 4 kills, all of them onto Vote. Talk about a rough early game here for this Raijin.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, that just can't be happening, really, in the mid lane. You just cannot afford to step up there without any sort of aggressive ward coverage. At this point, I mean, Vote is just minion number 7 in whatever wave he walks up to. He's not a god at this point. And Sanguine is doing such a good job of really pressuring him. They just got to try and find Space Station somewhere to get an advantage.
Well, Netrioid doesn't care who's in his lane. He wants to stay aggressive. Rongyu is here as well. Can close that gap. Darda's knocked up, but just out of range of Rongyu. But talk about the presence that not only Netrioid has had early in this game, but Rongyu as well. It seems everywhere this Horus goes, a kill is snowballing somewhere.
4 kills in 5 minutes, and he's got 4 assists. He's been a part of every single one of them, and he's been critical in every single one of them. I think Rongyu and Panatom were the 2 that had the biggest microscope coming into this SPL season, because Shinto and Netrioid have really popped off in their LAN performances. Yorkor as well had a big microscope on him because he hadn't gotten a chance to travel for LAN or anything like that. But I think the prevailing theory about Sanguine was that They have a lot of players who can play really well at a high level. Can Panatom and Rongyu really match that level? And so far, they've both been lights out so far in Season 7. Rongyu's looked phenomenal on every single god he's played. Yamoja, Horus, a lot of different styles for Sanguine support. And Panatom has hard carried games on Thor, he's hard carried games on the Circuit. He's been everywhere that he needs to be. The whole of Sanguine has stepped up to this level. And if there were some doubters somehow after they made it to Worlds last year, literally Worlds, by the way, that they wouldn't be able to play at this level consistently, then I don't think that there's any questions now.
Well, this time Vote will be able to escape beneath that mid lane tier 1 tower, but Vote has been back in base effectively on cooldown for the first 6.5 minutes of this one. And I love that the conversation around Sanguine kind of has started out with that their synergy is going to take them places. But I think it's starting to get to the point now where they are, I mean, there was never any question that they're mechanically skilled. But I think this is a team that's starting to have a little bit of both. There is some solo lane presence here from SSG, and maybe that's what you need here. It seems like the only lane for Sanguine that is not far and away ahead is in this solo lane. So maybe Cherio has the right idea in trying to get something going there for Nika.
But it's so hard to gank that King Arthur. I mean, even though you're Hun Bats, if he just times his Excalibur's Wrath well, it's going to be difficult for you to kill him at all, let alone not get killed in the process.
Rongyu blinked, or Dardes rather, blinked on Netrioid there for some follow-up, but finally an engagement won't result in the kill, and instead maybe it's SSG that'll add one to their column, but that is going to be Raffer thinking twice about fully engaging on this one. Remember, this is a 3-kill Jing Wei. If you overstay, Netrioid will plug away just enough damage, and he wants a little bit more. Airstrike up. We'll connect for some damage, but no kills this time. Raffer stays alive. Panatom just around the corner. Some fireworks, but no kills.
All right, that was Netrioid feeling himself a little bit right there. That was a bit of a heat check to try and solo Raffer right there. But you know what? I've got no problem with it. When you're 3-0 this early, you've been dominating lane, you kind of get that option to try and feel yourself on the heat check. And when I'm talking about pre-beadsing, by the way, Dardes shows you what that means right there. He gets blinked on by Rongyu and uses beads before that crowd control even hits him. So he still takes the damage, but never gets affected by the CC. If he gets affected by that knockup, he probably dies, knowing that his jump is already down. But he was very, very quick on the relic usage and kept himself alive. But that's still Sanguine forcing Space Station to make the play properly. 4 times this game, Vote has not made that play properly. That time Dardes did.
Raffer blinked on, stunned down. Rongyu might be the one in range to finish off the kill, but Panatom would like it on the Circuit, and he'll surely get it. That's 5 kills on the board, 8.5 minutes in for Sanguine, and that's the second for the Sanguine jungler. Panatom starting to hit some kills early as well.
I don't know that Cherio knows he's been tracked. Now he does, hearing that ward behind him. And Rongyu's here, but with no blink available, I don't think they're going to be able to stop Cherio on his pathing. Cherry, of course, always loves to go between Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower. I think he's one of the hardest junglers to keep track of in the league as far as where he wants to go.
Could be bad to worse here for Vote, but luckily this time, at least some health, whether it's passive, just gaining it through his leveling, Vote is able to get himself out alive. And I think it's a win at this point that Vote died 4 times, 4 or 5 minutes into this game. The fact that we've now doubled that time and he hasn't had any more deaths, I think that's got to be a win here for SSG, that now this Raijin is able just to breathe and maybe get some gold in his back pocket.
This lead could be far bigger for Sanguine. Space Station has done a good job righting the ship, but they're still sinking. It's just more slowly than you would have expected. They do need to start finding wins eventually. At this pace, Sanguine will win the game, but not by 22 minutes. Now, the thing that stood out to me the most about Space Station, having gone back and watched their games from last week, seen what they did at the Pittsburgh Knights tournament, I don't think there's any team in the league better at closing games quickly than Sanguine. Once they get that lead, they end games really, really fast. And it's kind of like they're in the boxing ring against their opponent and they see you stagger, they go for the kill faster than anyone else in the league. And so I think that teams will start to identify that. They can start setting up beforehand. What the big advantage of ending games quickly is that you don't give your opposition a moment to say, okay, we're down by this much, they're going to go for this, then they're probably going to go for this. And if we give this up but contest this and pull beads here and then try and get them on the Phoenix, they don't give you a chance to set all that up. But I think teams will start to quicken the pace of deciding what they want to do when behind against Sanguine. I don't know that that's always going to be the case, that they're just going to snuff out their opponents in the blink of an eye. But that is something that teams have to be prepped for now, is how quickly they end games. Sanguine's car might not be the fastest in the league, but it has the best acceleration for sure. Best 0 to 60 time in the league.
And you talk about kind of how the sort of starting point to that was that this lead could be a lot bigger, and it really could be, right? I mean, it's about a 1,000 gold lead with 5 kills on the board for Sanguine, none for SSG. In aggro, I'd argue that the majority of that gold differential is on vote and then kind of evenly distributed to the other members of Sanguine, because you look at solo lane largely, even Cherio even has a level advantage over Panatom. I mean, the way out of this game might have just been if vote is not strong enough to even fight. But SSG still have 4 members of their team that I think could be largely effective in some of these early fights that we might start seeing around this Gold Fury.
Yeah, but someone's got to try and do something to Shinto, man. I mean, he's level 14. He's got 7,600 net worth right now.
Hard to ignore that.
Just now, a couple people hit 7,000. He is huge right now, and I don't know how you really stop him. Merlin's not falling off towards the late game either. He's a phenomenal late game mage. So that's the biggest concern right now for Space Station in my mind. Is Vote going to be able to do effective things on the Raijin? And who in the world is going to be able to kill Shinto? Because I don't know that you really can. He hasn't finished this 3rd item yet. He's probably pretty close to that Soul Reaver, I'd imagine. As soon as he gets that, I think Sanguine should be pulling gold. Yeah, he's 10 gold off of finishing it. Probably wants to get to 1620 for a Sentry. As soon as he clears this mid wave, I want to see him back, spend that gold, and set up for Gold Fury, but might have just lost wrong.
Wrong, you unfortunately taken low, and that's going to be SSG's first kill of this one. It goes to Raffer, but Dardez is able to find himself an assist on that one. So Wrong You, so impactful in this early game, does catch his first death. It is Soul Reaver finished up for Shinto, and went Divine Ruin first overall, as well as into the blue boots there in the mid lane. So you talk about early, powerful, spiky itemization. Shinto's got it in spades.
Yeah, this is a really strong point for Shinto. And losing Rongyu there delays your Gold Fury pull a little bit, but I don't think it should end it. It looks like Space Station's going to try it, but this should be Sanguine ecstatic that there's people here.
Shinto moves in. Space Station Gaming realized that, and Gold Fury will be reset at about half health. And that might be all she wrote for this engagement. Yeah, I agree, Aggro. That's maybe wishful thinking there from SSG. Maybe that's just a... What do you call it? Kick the tires? Let's see if anyone from Sanguine's nearby. See if they have any idea.
See if anybody's awake, ring the doorbell, see if anyone answers, and then if they show up, that's fine. You just go about your way. But I'm surprised that Sanguine is so willing to play this slowly. Now that 1,000 gold lead is only 300. That's really not anything at this point in the game. Experience is still pretty heavily in their favor, but that's mostly centered around Shinto. You've got Power Spike items completed across the board. Look at how many completed items are the last thing in Sanguine's inventory. Relic Dagger, Genji's Guard, Soul Reaver, Executioner. All those are just finished. Look at Space Station. A lot of Tier 1, Tier 2 items that aren't finished. This is where you are far stronger and you need to force fights.
And they agree with you, and Sanguine are going to start up that Gold Fury with SSG close by. Panatom, the one closest to the red wall, but Sanguine's still slow playing this one. They want to back themselves off, and the Gold Fury is reset one more time. I kind of agree, Aggro. Surprising seeing how slow they're starting to play some of these early game fights.
They don't have great secure, and that's the big concern, is that Uller has better secure than anybody on their side.
Well, instead, maybe they'll press the gas pedal in the middle lane. Raffer has to burn the ultimate to get underneath the Tier 1 tower. Vote doing his best to plug away some good damage, and Yarkor on that King Arthur will now be firmly in the mix as 3 members of SSG will plug down half health on about everyone on Sanguine. You could see the opening, but Raffer has that kind of get-out-of-jail-free card with the Kuzenbo ult, and no kills as a result.
Yeah, it's a little surprised that wasn't a kill right there. I don't think Shinto dropped enough damage right off the bat. I don't think they realized how squishy Raffer was because of the item lead that Sanguine has. Would have liked to see them all in commit to that a little bit earlier. Shinto's a little bit late on his purification beads there, which means he takes way more damage than he really wants to.
Nika does have the World Serpent. He's going to be under duress. Might have to charge it. Here it is. A tier 1 tower dive. Instead, he's going to use his Aegis and never even attempts to use the ultimate. Panatom on a killing spree. 3 kills in this game,
Wow.
but Cheerio looking for more. Will not find anything. And all said and done, Sanguine at least grabbed themselves 1. Yarkor pulls tower aggro. Cheerio turns around to kill. They're not going to finish it off. Sanguine, they give one right on back as Cheerio snags his first kill of the game.
And Yarkor's in a
He's got
world of
minions.
trouble right now. Minions he's got to deal with. I don't know. He's got enough ult charge to full art Cheerio.
No!
But yeah, it's just going to be a Sacred Monkey. A little poop on the nose. It's going to finish off Yarkor. Now Netrioid in a bad spot.
Netrioid has to airstrike away as well. It looked like Sanguine maybe had the right idea with a kill on Tanika. Give a couple back, but Space Station Gaming have found themselves an opening. Shinto stunned down, has to burn the Aegis, but it won't save him this time. Rapper for his second kill of the game. Wrong, a nice double knock up and dash away, but he's only underneath his tier 1 tower in this mid lane. Tower dive could be on with a full collapse. Wrong, blinks backwards, and it seems like for the moment that'll get him out alive. So it is a 1 for none on this left side skirmish.
And somehow Space Station's now in the lead. Just so weird across the map there by Sanguine. And Rongyu's actually going to take them over towards Fire Giant. Oh, they could have pulled Big Fire. Dave, I thought this was going to be one of the best calls I've ever seen in my life. And they just, without Shinto there, they can't pull Big Fire. And they make the right call. They wouldn't have had the damage. That would have been the smartest thing I've ever seen where if Shinto was up. It's still incredibly smart. They get Pyromancer, they get something.
They get something.
But man, would that have been so sick if they had gone big FG. I don't think they would have had the damage to complete it, though. I think they make the right call to just take the safe one.
Oh, I was so ready for it. I was getting amped up. I was ready for the FG, and it won't end up being for Sanguine. They do get the Pyromancer, as you point out, and don't scratch your eyes. You're looking at that gold differential after a 4-5-0 start for Sanguine. SSG, about 3,000 gold in the lead here in this game. And a lot of that on Cherry. I mean, you look at that kind of 2-man attempted tower dive from Sanguine and then a skirmish on the left side jungle and then a secured Gold Fury. That is a massive swing in SSG's favor. There still is some scaling, though, for Sanguine, I think, that Space Station need to be worried about going into this late game.
Yeah, the late game for Sanguine is certainly strong, but Space Station's is as well. Man, I just feel like they really dropped the ball on not playing around Shinto and how big he was in that mid game. Really a huge lead for him. He was in a great spot to just carry this game, and then Sanguine just felt a little bit gun-shy around this Gold Fury. Then the engagement on the right-hand side, Nika baits in Panatom, but never uses ultimate, tries to survive without it and just use the Aegis, because he knows as soon as he ults, that engagement's over. And Cheerio eventually gets both kills, though it was awfully close to the point where it really should have just been Sanguine backing up.
Yep.
I don't know. I just feel like they had this opportunity to do a lot with that lead that Shinto had.
That is an attempted gank onto Netrioid, but Jingwei, ever safe, will be able to airstrike out and away. Cheerio did use the Fear No Evil as well, so now with some potential skirmishing happening in this left side jungle, an ultimate for Sanguine down, an ultimate for SSG down, and pointed out by Doug there, Cheerio is going to pick up the Prid win. So if you want to use those ults early and often, I guess that's a neat item to have.
Yeah, I mean, this is an odd choice for Cheerio for sure, because Pridwin's an item that scales based on your total protections. That's how big the shield gets. And he's obviously in the build, he's only got 60 from Pridwin itself, though you have to keep in mind that you're also getting your natural protection. So this is going to be, if I had to, so you got about 100 physical defense, which is really more than I thought he'd have with just that, but you get some pretty decent scaling there. So you're with the Sov prot buff that the Rapper has that he's getting, that's like a 200-ish health shield that's also giving you 200 damage whenever it pops. It's going to slow the enemy. Might not matter if they have beads, but it's adding 200 damage and it's 20% CDR. It's not horrible, I guess. It's just a little bit odd.
It's curious, and we'll have to see if Cheerio can forge that into some success here. And worth checking in on. There's another Fear No Evil drop down by Cheerio, but Netrioid or Panatom rather, will be able to get himself out of this fight. So, as I figured he might, Cheerio looking for those engagements early and often. Raffer burns Kuzumbo ult as well. but still no kills on the board. This one has slowed way down here in the last few minutes. Aggro after, 4 or 5 kills in the first 5 minutes.
It's really been the threat of this Hun Bats stopping Sanguine from being aggressive. And it's also the fact that Raffer's playing Kuzenbo, which is just a god that's really, really hard to kill at any point in the game. He's got lots of mobility. You're doing damage to yourself while killing him, which never feels particularly good. And then he's going to use that ultimate, which is a long-duration CC immune ultimate that displaces you, moves him around the map pretty quickly. Right. It's just tough to knock him down, and especially with this level lead that Raffer has. He's up 3 levels on Rongyu right now, which is really quite a bit. Normally, supports are willing to be about a level or 2 down to their opposition if they're trying to funnel farm into the right area, get Shinto ahead like Sanguine did early on. But at this point, you don't really want to be only level 12 against a bunch of level 18s and 19s on the other side.
I'm curious, Aggro, and we've seen, I would say, a wide smattering of builds, honestly, in the Hunter role here as of late. And Doug pointing out another Prid one locked down for Raffer. But I think Jingwei's have felt maybe a little bit more comfortable moving into 1 or 2 crit items, Netrioid picking up the Rage, and then likely a Wind Demon after that. Maybe back to that in a moment, as Raffer will have to make use of that Prid one, and he's going to get himself out alive. But do you like kind of that double crit itemization that a lot of Jingwei players have started going for?
I don't mind it, but it is spooky against a Kuzenbo. And especially, I like it against Yorm because even with Spectral, he's a lot less tanky than most other solo laners. Against a Kuzenbo with Thorns, it scares me because you're going to kill yourself really quickly. I don't even know if Raffer's going to build Spectral because he might want Netrioid to take as much damage as humanly possible off of that Thorns and Shell Spikes combo.
Well, after a bit of stagnation here in the mid game, we might be starting to see an engagement around this Gold Fury, and I think that'll give us a good idea of maybe where things stand. SSG still about 3,000 gold in the lead, so at least gold-wise, things are in their favor. Sanguine are going to pull out the Fury here, but step themselves back. And the dance will continue. Who do you look to maybe engage here?
You think it's going to be Panatom, but he just lost his Purification Beads, which is a big deal. So that's going to be your guide to try and get in there and get his hands dirty. They'll be up fairly soon because the Relic Dagger he's picked up. But I think that does put a big hamper on Sanguine's initiation. Whereas Space Station, you've got Hun Bat's Blink ult, you've got Raffer Blink, you've got Nika who could just pop that ultimate on a flank or try and find a knock-up like this.
Well, Panatom was out of range just for a moment, but I think luckily for Sanguine, SSG didn't realize. Fury pulled one more time, Yarkor in, Panatom leaps over the wall in the back line of Fear No Evil, catches onto 3 members of Sanguine, and Raffer now zoning out all 4 members of Sanguine that want to try to re-engage. Nika will take to the World Serpent and find a couple knockups, but he just disengages to go back to the rest of SSG. 2 ultimates down for SSG, almost 5 ready to go for Sanguine. Yarkor moves in, Sanguine take away the Oni Fury. The engagement is back from Sanguine. Nika caught a bit in the middle, but they're too low to fully re-engage. Cheerio agrees with that statement as well. He'll leap out, but Dardes finds the kill onto Shinto. You lose the Fury, but you might win the fight. It's a 1 for none, but Sanguine take the Fury away.
Sanguine make a big play. I don't know if that was Shinto with a Frostbolt or Rongyu who dunks it down with that to the skies, but getting that Oni Fury, a win for Sanguine, but it almost baits them because they start to feel a little bit empowered by that win. And you could tell that they kind of wanted to be stepping forward, but their decision-making was being stopped by their brains saying, hey, their carries are awfully healthy, our health bars are a little bit low, we've already used some key relics and some key positionings. Maybe we should be backing up, but it's, oh, we got Gold Fury, we can keep going. They only lose Shinto, so it could be a lot worse. But Sanguine maybe let the moment get the better of them a little bit there.
Well, SSG push that advantage, the one-man advantage, a little bit further and take away the Pyromancer, Fire Giant rather, being positioned around by SSG. But realizing that Shinto will be back shortly, maybe this is just a chance to move forward, grab themselves some ward coverage. Because, as long and drawn out of a dance as we saw around the Oni Fury aggro, the Fire Giant, I think, will be a tense moment for both of these teams as well.
It's just a lack of secure on both sides. We've seen Sanguine not want to pull Gold Furies because of the fear of getting it stolen. We just watched Space Station get an Oni Fury stolen away. These are two teams that just don't have great objective secure. Now, Sanguine's got great objective burn because of Merlin, especially with that Spear of the Magus, which really is there to help on objectives more than the other players.
Engagement onto Dardes, who has to leap away, but Panatom is there to apply a little bit of poison. The Aegis is up, and it won't be enough to save his life. Panatom has found a kill onto the SSG Hunter. Vote is going to make his way out, has to use the disengage, but Yarkor's right there to follow up. 2 kills so far for Sanguine. They're going to want some extra. Nika just slithers away thanks to that World Serpent. It's a 2 for none. Sanguine maybe now turn their eyes towards the FG.
Such a perfect engage by Sanguine, and it's all wrong to you, man. I mean, he finds Dardes through the trees, and then is able to get on top of Vote with that ult.
Hey, it's easier to secure the Fire Giant if no one is left alive to steal it away from you. Rapper overstays this one a little bit too long. You're no longer a welcome guest, say Sanguine. Nika, no World Serpent to get out alive. 4 members ultimately fall now for SSG, and the Fire Giant will be restarted once again, but Cheerio is hanging close by.
Got that ultimate coming up soon. Blink still available as well, but he's getting hunted right now by Yarkor and Panatom. Cherio's trying to make the hero play, but won't even get a chance to use it. Easy Fire Giant for Sanguine. And I want to point out, Doug brought up the team fight recap after that little skirmish on the right-hand side where both Vote and Dardes fell. Space Station had more damage. It's just that Sanguine is hitting the same targets all the time. Whoever is their primary shot caller has everyone on a leash, basically, and it's working perfectly for this team. And this is where I get scared for Space Station. Really, any team that loses a Fire Giant to Sanguine, loses a big team fight, they get 5 for 0 there. 26-40-ish on that Fire Giant. I wonder if they're going to end it before this fire even comes off of them, because that's what they usually do to teams.
And, you know, as discrepant as this game has been, remember, Space Station Gaming had the largest gold lead of this game at about 4,000 not 5 minutes ago. But you look at these non-respawning objectives still that Sanguine have to take. It's tier 1 towers, 3 tier 2 towers, 1 tier 1 in the middle lane. This gold differential is going to continue to build for Sanguine. Might get a little bit wider as Rapper has come to play, but Sanguine are having none of it. Rapper has to get himself out alive, and it's the Pridwin this time, maybe some extra shielding that keeps him alive there, but it's still a tier 2 tower that Sanguine look free to take.
And Panatom uses ultimate, but that's no big deal. He's got 40% CDR. That's not a concern. There's a lot of towers on the map, and Sanguine not trying to go for that Phoenix is very, very smart. Their gold lead is not substantial at this point. Let's just get all this gold off the map and make sure that we are really far ahead before we start pushing for the end.
This tier 1 tower finally falling 28 minutes into this game. Sanguine out ahead of that one. So you have a Jingwei with a fully stacked Rage now, and she will be hitting plenty hard. No Spectral Armor just yet on this Spectral Armor watch. Tier 2 tower under duress here now in the mid lane. Panatom just lurking close by back behind. He has felt free and clear to dive the back line and try to get himself out afterwards. I think SSG just showing some face around that tier 2 tower. I think smartly not re-engaging.
Wonder what the game plan is here from Sanguine, because they're going to have a lot of gold in hand. Doug already has it up. This is going to bring everybody pretty close to 2K in hand. Ooh, they want to just reset after this, go get this tier 2, go to Gold Fury, get that Primal Fury down, and then reset for another firefight? Or are they going to try and push for a Phoenix without spending any of this gold? I think it's a pretty tough call. I think the safer call, no doubt, is that they just back and spend this gold and try and win a fight straight up.
Yeah, safe is going by the wayside here as Rongyu is blinked underneath the right side tier 2 tower this time. Methodical maybe from Sanguine just to clear the map of all towers. Panatom has found Dardes again, but the actives will save the Hunter's life just for a moment. Panatom gets taken down a little bit low, and Yarkor has moved himself into the mid game. The rest of Sanguine just chipping away at this tower. Rapper doing his best to play Separator and has actually dragged one back, but Rongyu dashes out. Shinto finishes off the kill onto the SSG Guardian. Nika takes to the ground, and ultimately it is a tier 2 tower and 1 kill for Sanguine, and somehow all 5 members make it out alive. But Aggro, they might stick around and look for more.
It looks like it. They know no ults are up on Space Station. Dart has no relics at all. Shinto has both his relics, as does Netrioid. It's risky, but not as risky as it looks, I don't think. I wouldn't mind them staying for this, but they only have one more wave to do it. With Fire Giant falling off in 20 seconds, may as well just strip the jungle and go for this Primal Fury instead. I think this is just fine.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I think that's maybe a decision-making call, and we looked at it yesterday, and we don't want to bring it up too heavily, but we've seen games kind of lost at questionable decision-makings to stick around underneath those Phoenixes, try to end the game.
Oh, yeah.
When maybe you can play a little bit more safe. So I think Sanguine, ultimately, they're playing that safe route. The Fire Giant buff falls off. Now let's get the Primal Fury. It'll help us out with the next Fire Giant, spend our gold, and then maybe get Fire Giant and end after that.
Yeah, this is going to be 3K in hand for most players. I mean, this is full items, not quite selling your boots, but this is power pot territory. Grab that extra little bit of power and set yourself up to just go and win the game. Shinto just got to finish the Obsidian Shard, upgrade both his relics, and get a power pot all at the same time. I mean, that is a huge power spike for him. And now, even if this game doesn't end right here, Shinto can afford to play a little bit more aggressively because he has those relics upgraded. I think Space Station did a good job of keeping themselves in this game, despite Sanguine getting that delayed deicide and grabbing that Fire Giant, but it didn't come for free. They lost everything on the map besides those Phoenixes.
Absolutely. Fire Giant right back up. There's some shallow ward coverage for SSG as Fire Giant springs from the earth once again. Sanguine have secured the one and only Fire Giant so far in this game, and for the moment, even potentially just looking for a fight. They do have enough damage. They have started the Fire Giant, Sanguine have, so they're going to send Rongyu and Yarkor forward just to play zone. As it's like Netrioid is just going to try to solo this thing all on his own. Cherio realizing this moves his way in. Yarkor knocks up Cherio. Down goes to Fear No Evil, but it's only caught onto one. Rapper taken low. Fire Giant reset. Pentatom, okay. Rapper goes down. It's a 4 versus 5, and they're looking for the re-engage. Rongyu has brought Sanguine back into the fray. It's a double kill now for Panatom. 3 members left screaming from SSG. Yarkor knocks down Dardes. Might even find himself a double. Cherio, no fear, no evil. A double kill for Yarkor, a double kill for Panatom, and aggro. I think that might just be the game.
5 for 0, and Sanguine doesn't even break a sweat. Shinto just waiting for the boys to take care of the Phoenix for him. But man, what an impressive game from Sanguine. I think that they lost themselves in the mid-game a little bit, but for my money, Sanguine is really good at this stage of the game. I think they're great in the 5-on-5 team fights. I think the weakest part of their game so far has really been that early game, but they've really managed to play around that nicely and get past those early game struggles sometimes. That early game went as well as could possibly go.
Yeah.
They dropped it off a little bit in the mid-game, but if you get to 35, 40 minutes against Sanguine, good luck, man, because they look so good in those moments. If they had Space Station played like a fiddle, I mean, Space Station couldn't go anywhere without Sanguine knowing exactly where they were, and they couldn't decide the terms of that engagement at all. Yep. They were all playing on Sanguine's terms right there, and Sanguine cleaned them up easily.
And I love the call there, realizing Netrioid has enough damage just to solo the Fire Giant on his own. It's either you're going to have to come into us and contest, or we're going to fight you on your own terms, take the Fire Giant. I think a great call there from Sanguine. I am curious, though, if maybe more teams start to try to punish Sanguine early, because I feel like a lot of their success has been in that early game.
Yeah, I think that has to be where you have to look at the Sanguine team. I mean, even in previous years in the minor league, if they got you to late game, they were winning most of those games. It's the games where they got steamrolled early on that gave them trouble. And a quick note about that build for Netrioid, no one else is building as much crit as him. It's because of that build that he's able to play that play style and try and solo that Fire Giant. And Sanguine's playing around it really well. It's not just for the enemy players, it's the way that they play these objective fights. Netrioid kind of has to build that way, and then they play around it so well.
We figured this one would be a lot of fun to watch, and somehow that still feels like an understatement after game number 1. Sanguine swing first, and they connect. They grab a 1-0 lead here in our first set of the day on Saturday, but Aggro and I are done talking about this one. We'll get it back to Finch and Miff to break it down.
Thank you, Dolson and Aggro. That is a big game 1, and big games deserve big skins. I want to remind y'all about Totem Color, Hou Yi, the unlimited Tier 5 Hou Yi skins available right now. If you go click buy all in the Grim Omens event, you can also get 15 exclusive skins, 3 other unlimited reward skins, and more content when you buy all. That sounds pretty good to me. And you know what else sounds pretty good to me, Mifflin? Starting off your setup against Space Station 1-0 in favor of Sanguine here, man. I mean, that's a crazy start to this game. It starts off with Vote kind of getting body over there in lane. It starts off with with them getting off to such an early lead, and it looked like there was no way Sanguine were going to be able to drop it. But then the game gets way more competitive and starts to move on, and it was all these throws back and forth. Myth, try and go back through and give me a thread to follow throughout that game.
All right, I'm going to break down the entire game in 100 or less words right now. Sanguine get off to a fantastic start, 4-0, as you pointed out, but immediately it seemed like Sanguine was trying too hard to push the lead in that long lane. Raffer immediately dipped out of there and started splitting up the farm, and it got them back in the match. Despite being 5-1 at 10 minutes, the gold lead was completely shattered. Around the 15-minute mark, we saw that SSG just pulled ahead. And then from there, it was all SSG until about that 25-minute mark around that Fire Giant fight where Sanguine win wholeheartedly, get a stagger pick on the entirety of SSG's comp, get the Fire Giant, and then from there, it was all Sanguine, and they never dropped it again. I mean, yes, it was a tumultuous set, but Sanguine showed that they can win the early game, and despite falling apart for the most part, can bring it back in the late. As Aggro said, these guys, you can't let them get to that late game mark.
And to me, a lot of this was wrong, you Mifflin. Look at these early game clips, right? I mean, yeah, this is Netroid finding big shots, but it's Horus brings so much pressure just with one or two abilities in lane. We were talking about how you don't normally think of Jingwei as this pressure pick, but when Horus has this lockdown into the persistent gust, there's just no way that you're going to be able to make out of it. And then when they got into the late game, it was all about his To the Skies and how well he used it. It helped to set up for that Gold Fury steal. That's what set up for that fight they lost in right after Space Station pushed the Tier 1 tower around the FG. And then the Horus ultimate came over. They suddenly closed the gap. That's what sealed the game at the end as well. After they got their pick on the Raffer, I believe, they pushed forward and were able to find that kill over in right too. I really think the Horus pick was the hero of this set.
And it's so surprising that do we see Sanguine pick up Horus immediately. Yes, Horus got that buff on his ultimate that makes it a fantastic utility tool, now be able to move further and faster. But you don't often see teams adapt to those sort of meta changes as quickly. Sanguine proving that they play Smite 24/7, they're already fully adept at playing around this Horus.
You're exactly right, man. They came with it ready. And remember who the beneficiary ended up being, Mifflin, of that early game start for Sanguine. It really wasn't even Netroid, despite him being the one that kind of bodied in lane. It was really Shinto, right? Shinto was the one that got to like a 3 or 4 level lead over Vote. And I want to talk about how Space Station responded to it as well. They did that role swap. They brought Vote over towards mid. They let him get a little bit more farm back. They brought Dardes over to long lane, let him go even up against Netroid and try and buy them some time. And I think it actually really worked. They were able to bring the game back pretty close to parity. It just didn't end up being enough.
That role swap really was the only option they had. They couldn't leave him over there to the wolves in the long lane. And once they did switch off, they did a fantastic job, SSG that is, of splitting up the farm. Yeah, I mean, Vote did get picked out one more time in middle, but after that, it was just farming constantly. He didn't get involved in any of those early game fights and immediately closed up that level gap. I imagine we see SSG shift their focus and try not to get 4-0 easy swept in the first 3 minutes of this game.
No, it's a brutal start, man, to that game for them, and Sanguine capitalized on it, though it looked like they might let it slip away for a bit. And I gotta wonder, man, if this is going to be a kind of sort of wake-up call feels like the right word, right? But this is going to put Space Station on notice, I think. You cannot take this Sanguine roster for granted. For me, there were two options. Either Obey are a bit worse than we thought, and the Sanguine win doesn't mean as much as we thought, or Sanguine are just better than we had thought. And I think right now, I'm leaning towards Sanguine might be better than we gave them credit for.
I mean, they took out SSG one game in the set so far, but that is monumentous. That is huge. It completely shakes my understanding of the standings in the league. I thought SSG was going to be an uncontested top tier, but Sanguine coming out at the heels of the king and shooting up for the head, it's pretty nutty. Now they have to prove that SSG has to play around them. I imagine we don't see the Kuzumbo pick up from Raffer. Maybe we see some respect shown towards that Horus as well. We might see that picked out for SSG just to take it away. But Merlin, going to be picked up for Sanguine again. I mean, if it works, it works.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a run back so far. It's the Hell, Thor, Persephone from Space Station, the Kemazotsu Mocha, and the Xing Chen. Remember, Space Station banned the Aphrodite, I believe, and then one more after that. So this is pretty much the same. They're going to get Shinto back onto this Merlin pick for Sanguine on the left side, and then Space Station are going to take this Jormungandr again. And I think this is worth talking about a bit, too. I don't think Nika particularly impressed me on this pick. There were some times where he held his ult forever, and I just wasn't so sure why that was the calculation for him. How did you feel about the performance of the Jorm?
Hey, fam.
I'm not a huge fan of Jormungandr. I mean, you said it earlier. He is like as if you had picked Sun Wukong and hit the upgrade button, slightly better. But for the most part, he is just looking to backline disrupt and stay even in lane. And I don't think that you want to stay even in lane. You want to pull ahead. if you do pick Jormungandr, it tells me that you trust the rest of your squad to just win the match elsewhere, and you're going to hold your own in that lane. But it seems like SSG is going to need to pull ahead a little bit further, maybe rely on all of their parts. So I would have liked to see him pick a more traditional warrior instead of this Jormungandr.
Yeah, I think last time Yarkor ends up getting that King Arthur to go up against the Jormungandr. It's the Aphrodite, though. This time, remember, Space Station banned this in Game 1, so they clearly were valuing it. They were worried that Sanguine were going to take it, but Space Station elected to take it for themselves. And because we saw Vote start in the long lane when they had the lower pressure pick, it does make me wonder. I think Aphrodite can do a bit better in the mid lane, so maybe she won't have to swap, but you kind of got to keep it in the back of your mind because Space Station are willing to do it.
They are, and even if they do elect to put this Aphrodite in an off-role spot, she could flex towards support. She could flex all over the map. We could even see Jormungandr go support and Aphrodite solo, so maybe SSG picks it up this early, not only because she is a fantastic pick post-buffs, but she is a decent flex. Kuzenbo coming out again, I'm not a huge fan. Rapper wasn't able to do much.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about the Kuzenbo. I'm a bit surprised that Sanguine are letting the bots through again. They're banning the Kali and the Ganesh in that spot. And I don't know, man. I don't love letting Cheerio tend to pick one of the best assassins in the game twice in a row. But I agree about the Kuzenbo. I don't think Raffer got a ton of value out of it. I think it's part of why Vote got so rocked. Kuzenbo is not very much help in the early game. So I don't know, man. I don't love this pick for him, but I trust Raffer implicitly when it comes to playing Smite. The guy's a god.
Yeah, I mean, questioning the king is hard to do. However, Rapper on this Kuzenbo is telling me that it doesn't matter that last game didn't start off too well. Kuzenbo is a guy that you pick and you want to run with him from the minute one. He has to get this lead. A Kuzenbo from behind isn't a Kuzenbo. So I imagine we see some more aggressive play coming out of the early.
Well, it's time to start with game number 2.
Thank you, Finch. Thank you, Mifflin. Sanguine strike first up against SSG. And the question we kind of had going into that breakdown, aggro, was the SSG have the ability to change, swing first in this early game, get some momentum going for their side. I am curious, though. Sanguine, aside from the Susano, have been able to run back their Game 1 composition. Space Station Gaming, again, aside from their jungler and now their mid laner, something very similar. Do you like the change or maybe lack of change that you've seen in the pick ban phase here for both teams?
Yes and no. There are things I like about Space Station and things that I wish they would have changed. First and foremost, I am floored that Rongyu got Horus again, because I completely agree with what Finch is saying. He was the catalyst for that Game 1. And Raffer has one of the best Horuses in the world. So I really thought that Space Station was going to pick Uller Horus top 2. They stick to the Yorm. I'm just a little bit surprised by that. It feels like that's a difference in what they value in the support role. That this Kuzenbo for Raffer seems to be the call. But I do like they've given Vote the Uller this time around. Clearly Dardes had a better time in this lane than Vote did. It's low bar. But I think that just giving him a god that can fight early instead of that traditional mage and Raijin makes more sense.
Well, I am not surprised at all that we've already seen Rongyu use his blink, get into the back line, and just try to make this long lane as uncomfortable as possible. I mean, if you're SSG, anything better than dying 3 times 3 minutes into this game will be an improvement on game number 1. And you know, I think while I totally agree, it's wild to me that Rongyu gets Horus again and that Raffer is sticking with the Kuzenbo. I feel like the Kuzenbo found some early game presence there for SSG. The couple of kills that Space Station did have were on the back of Raffer.
I agree. I think that Raffer did do a lot in that game, but it's just that Rongyu did so much that it's taking it away, and you're not losing a whole lot on your side, right? That's the big thing for me.
Oh, there is a dash forward knock-up from Netrioid onto Vote. The final shot is there. You've got to be kidding me. They've done it again. First blood 2 minutes in. Netrioid right onto the board. Vote back to base. Same story, different game.
Dude, I just don't understand what is Vote's beads button broken? Like, look, the first Game 1, sure, you haven't played against this combo in a while, maybe. You don't really know how much damage you're going to take. Bro, he got rocked by this so many times in Game 1. It is inexcusable to hold the beads in that situation Game 2. You gotta use them, man. Even if he beads as the Jingwei knockup and dodges the auto attack, he lives there. He had 3 different CCs he could have beads.
and chose to hold him for next game. But look, man, hey, if there's game 3, watch out, because those beads are going to be up and ready to go, because he's got them ready for game 3.
And, you know, it seems like maybe he's now back in Respawn, and Vote is maybe under the impression that the presence will be there early and often. I don't know. I'm trying to find a way to dance around the lack of bead usage here. But it's such a similar start. I mean, 2 less kills on the board at this point. But it's Wrong You immediately helping Netrioid get ahead. He'll return down to this long lane. And then at some point, I expect Wrong You, with this lead that he's built for himself, to just bring it over to the mid lane and start to help some presence onto Dardes with maybe lack of mobility on the Aphrodite. So I love the way Sanguine have started this game, and that's sort of a self-answering question. SSG haven't stuck it to Sanguine just yet.
No, not at all. And again, Netrioid's doing the right thing, freezing this wave, forcing Vote to come up, and it pulls Raffer over here. This is going to make sure that Vote doesn't get solo farm or anything like that. And as soon as Raffer shows up, sure, we lost some kill potential. Now we have to worry about the CC and damage coming from the Kuzenbo. We'll hard push and go and get our Alpha Harpy and do something productive with our time. Use his duo pressure. Maybe we can go and get Oracles or contest Cherio on those at the very least. This is how you play duo lane, man. Wrongyu and Netriard are putting on a clinic.
And I do think it is worth mentioning, I brought up Dardes a little bit in that mid lane, Aphrodite. She's been a pick that a lot of pros and a lot of people in the community have talked about. Cherio has found a gank. Palau looking for a chain on a Netrioid. That one does connect, but the beads used by the Sanguine Hunter will keep him alive under the duress of a jungle gank. Panatom is here, will pull back Cherio. Dash maybe still on cooldown from Cherio. Down he goes, Netrioid's second kill in the game. 4.5 minutes in, a little bit slower, but kills are flowing just the same.
Trickster Spirit, a long cooldown, man. It takes time for that to come back up, and Cherio just didn't have it in time. Raffer and Vote really can't do very much to stop Panatom, but man, I really thought Cherio was going to be out of range. That Wind Siphon felt like it pulled him from a mile away, but that's Susano, man. I mean, he displaces you. He has a lot of CC and a lot of mobility, and Panatom put it to good use there.
And I wonder now what SSG are thinking. I mean, you're looking at a near mirror draft from what Sanguine had in Game 1, and a near mirror start to what we saw in Game 1. The kills spread out, at least this time. It's not all on one man. But maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of look at it. If you're SSG, maybe you realize where things went wrong in Game 1 and can make some changes here for Game 2, but I haven't seen those quite yet, Aggro.
No, I don't think they've played around the way that Sanguine showed them they're going to play in Game 1 particularly well. We're seeing Raffer come over to that left side more than he was last time. That is some sort of adjustment. Cherio spending more time ganking early than he did last time around. That also shows some willingness to change. But it's just not a composition here for Space Station that is super sick in the early game. I think they have really drafted a weaker early game composition than they had in game number 1. Daji is an assassin that takes a long time to get to the point where she's doing the things you want her to do. Everything she does scales at 100%. She's nuts come late game, but not super good early game. Aphrodite obviously is not going to be at her strongest in the early game, where she needs a lot of cooldown and a lot of power to make her heals really impactful.
Another beads used by Sanguine, burnt down by Cherio. So Cherio certainly not shying away from looking for engagements, just hasn't found a successful one just yet. And I think that's an interesting pivot point. Aggro, I would hesitate to say I haven't seen a Susano yet, even in all the SEC, SOC games we've watched in this preseason. What makes Panatom reach for the Susano here?
It's an interesting point, because you're right, we haven't seen a whole lot of Susano, which I find kind of surprising, but he did take a nerf in Season 7 and is just one of those gods that in a competitive setting, it's much easier to lock down this mobile assassin than it is in your ranked game. Susano might be dominating when it comes to ranked and casual, but it's really, really easy when there's little communication and you can just find your target and kill them instantly in the backline. His damage is quick, but it's not super instant. It is a lot of refires, and you can interrupt him pretty easily during his ultimate or during his 1, during his 3. There's difficulties in getting that whole kit off in a competitive setting, and this time Panatom probably goes for it because it's just a god that insta-kills Ullr a lot of the time. Ullr has a really hard time getting away from Susano, Because if you put that Wind Siphon on him, you set up for the Jet Stream. The Jet Stream sits on him, and you just wait until the Ullr jumps away. And as soon as he does, you insta-kill him for it. You can force him to jump by using Typhoon, and even then Typhoon can still hit him if the timing is bad. It's just a pick that really bullies Hunters very well. And
Right.
I don't blame Panatom for going for something that is going to put Vote even further behind, because I'm sure Vote isn't feeling like he's playing his best right now. And if you can
Right.
put him in that hole mentally, I think it's pretty easy to find a win here.
It seems like any god that requires synergy is going to be great for Sanguine, because they've got that in spades. And then, I think even outside of just getting away from Susano, Ullr for Vote has had a tough time in this early game getting away from some of the duress in that long lane. It looks like the Gold Fury may be starting to be looked at here by both teams. I do like what I see out of SSG, though, Aggro. If you look at the ward coverage on the left side of that jungle, deep in the Sanguine side of things. So, if nothing else, SSG, despite being about call it 800 gold behind here, so not massive, do at least still have some good roaming map control, and they'll be able to sniff out Sanguine when this Gold Fury maybe is going to get started up.
This is not a horrible start for Space Station, all things
No way.
considered. Again, they're behind, but not by very much. But like I said at the end of game one, man, Sanguine being marginally ahead in the early game is a good spot for them to be in, because I think their late game is so good that just being in this position where you're not where you are still in control of the pace of the game, where it's still up to you on where and when fights happen, I think Sanguine's in a great spot at this point. Space Station really, in my mind, is a team that could have just gone with brute force in the early game and really put Sanguine behind the 8-ball, but they didn't draft for that, and they haven't gotten that in execution either.
Watch out, Dardes. Wrong you is here to play. Afro taken low. There's maybe a slight lack of mobility playing into this gank. Dardes will dance back and get some healing as well. Panatom is here, but Cheerio is going to be enough disengaged to make Sanguine think twice about moving forward. So maybe what Aphrodite lacks in escape, she makes up for in a little self-sustain.
I think Shinto just a little bit preemptive on using that Vortex, the Arcane 2, to try and pull in Dardes. I think if he just waits for Rongyu to land that updraft and find the slow after the fact, that guarantees a kill. And Shinto kind of lets Rongyu try and finish that kill off, and because that forces Sanguine back after using a lot of resources, Netrioid uses his ultimate on trying to get a purple buff defense. This opens up a Gold Fury for Space Station.
And there is some of that vision maybe playing off. Space Station Gaming realizing that Sanguine aren't close by to contest on that one, so the gold pulled back now for SSG, but I hesitate to even make that point. You're looking at about 300 gold. So if nothing else, that about just evens up this game. Do you think that's maybe a sneaky call there from SSG to start up the Gold Fury, or is that more Sanguine maybe asleep at the wheel a little bit?
It's Space Station making an opening, and Sanguine probably goes, they could be on gold, but we can't really stop it at this point, so let's just hope they aren't. That's kind of your game plan at that point. Having used Rongyu's ultimate, Shinto took a little bit of poke, Panatom took a little bit of poke, Netrioid invaded purple and had to ult out in order to stay safe. That's a lot of resets that have to happen for Sanguine, and Space Station just intelligent and using their sustain that they have in their kits, and just understanding the macro of the map, knowing that Sanguine's going to have to reset or come in at a disadvantageous fight. They're fine to pull that either way.
And I think a smart call there for SSG and maybe even Sanguine to realize that was not a winning fight for them on their end. So all is held equal here, about 11 minutes in, and slower. I think anything would have been slower from what we saw in game one. Sanguine did still strike for a couple of kills early in this game. And I sort of look towards that mid lane. We've had conversation about Aphrodite, and I think I always have to bring up a Rod of Tahuti when it's picked up. I mean, that is a massive, just magical power spike to pick up for a first item overall. Raffer might need some help from that Rod of Tahuti. Not going to happen this time, but Darda is opting for an early, large power spike on that Aphrodite.
And I love it on Afro. It's a little bit bad. It feels a little bit bad to not go for as much cooldown as early as possible to not get Chronos Pendant in that slot. But this passive is nuts because of this below 50% health threshold. It's great for Afro. It means that her lovebirds, if they start ticking you when it's below 50%, now they're going to do a lot more damage. That back off, if Cherio goes in and gets you below 50%, that back off feels almost like an execute at times.
Yep.
But it also works if she's healing someone on her team below 50%, those heals are 25% stronger. It goes both ways. So this is a very, very strong item on Aphrodite. And it feels a little bit rough to spend this much gold early on, but to have it for the whole game from this point out and not have to save up for it later is so, so good. And it feels like you're going to end up in a much stronger point.
I think that does also open the door. Shinto prioritizing that Divine Ruin first overall. Still more engagements in this mid lane here as Rapper will lock down Wrong You, but safe enough to get out alive for Sanguine. And I got to admit, Aggro, I mean, despite 2 kills on the board for Sanguine, I mean, really gold and XP is maybe where you have to look. It sort of feels like SSG are kind of in the driver's seat on this one. It's, you know, Sanguine absolutely still in this game. Nothing is over just yet, but you look at kind of map pressure and map presence, just to me, it feels like SSG are the ones kind of calling the shots.
Agreed, and their composition scales so well come late game that it's going to be pretty easy for them to continue to do just that.
Watch out, Wrong You wants to join the fight, and he does that. Raffer takes to the ultimate and will get out alive. Sanguine looking to re-engage on what maybe would have been an opening on SSG, but nothing as a result. So right as we say it, that certainly shows that Sanguine are not going to shy away from a fight, especially when they found maybe a member or two of SSG a bit caught out.
But as soon as Rapper's under any sort of danger, you've got Dardes right there. He's positioned perfectly, far away from the fight. No way anything can hit him, but close enough that that link hasn't broken at any point. I mean, it's just so hard to play around Afro, man. I mean, she just does everything. It's not like she's super low in damage anymore. I mean, her damage is now much more confirmable. She clears fairly well in the early game, and she still has this late game that feels so, so difficult to play against. I think Sanguine's going to have a tough time against it.
Cherio continuing to look for aggression. And I kind of, you know, I just mentioned prior to some of that mid-fight, Shinto opting for that Divine Ruin first overall again. That's not super surprising. But remember, he went Soul Reaver, I guess technically second completed item overall. But Ethereal Staff lockdown for Shinto's second overall here. What's maybe his thought process there?
Yeah, I'm surprised that he's willing to switch it up. I mean, he went E-Staff last game, but maybe he just felt like that he wasn't as far ahead and couldn't afford the more expensive item at this point in the game would be my best guess. Maybe he wants to steal some health from that Aphrodite and make her easier to kill. It's small window, but maybe that ends up making Panatom or Netrioid have an easier time killing that Afro if you can hit him with an E-Staff proc. I'd imagine it's the cost more than anything else, though, and maybe the little bit of health as well. Cherio's on a pretty effective dive character in Daji this time around, so maybe he just wants that extra HP that Soul Reaver couldn't have provided.
And we've seen Cherio, you point him out, engaging early and often here in this game, and hasn't found really anything at all for his efforts. And I almost am waiting in bated breath, Aggro, for when these solo laners start to rotate over into a lot of these fights, because that's really where we saw some big explosions in game one, right? I mean, Nika maybe found some openings in the fights here and there, but I look at Yarkor down the stretch in game number one on this King Arthur. Once those rotations into the big sweeping team fights started, granted there haven't been any yet in this game, I feel like that's where Sanguine were able to even further their advantage in game number one.
Completely agree. I didn't get a chance to talk about it as much as I wanted to, but Yarkor had a really, really strong game one because he was consistently forcing Cherio to use those Fear No Evils to separate him from the team fights, but still creating so much space, forcing Fear No Evil onto himself and always surviving through it. He picked up Purification Beads at level 12 last time around. We'll see what he decides to go for this time. Looks like it was Purification Beads that have already been used. So you can expect the same sort of thing where Yarkor is going to be pretty free to dive in the mid to late game and not be too threatened by the CC from Cherio.
And that's what we expect and maybe hope to see from Yarkor, because I don't know, I love watching a good King Arthur. There's just something like it almost feels this is oversimplifying. It almost feels like button mashy to a point, but like calculated button mashing, you know? And
Would
there's
you
just something
say,
about watching...
Dave, would you fair
Go
to
ahead.
say that you kind of enter the flow state when you're playing King Arthur? Like,
Right,
you
your
close
eyes
your
go
eyes
blank. Right.
and you're you've entered, you've ascended to a different plane when you're playing King
Right.
Arthur. That's the best part of Arthur, is when you hit that flow state for sure.
I agree, and everything just starts hitting. And Yarkor is one of those guys that we've seen certainly can make the King Arthur look pretty darn good, and SSG are going to think that this Oni Fury looks pretty good, and they're going to take it away. Nobody from Sanguine one more time in range to contest on the Fury. Panatom was looking for a pullback, connects just onto the wall there, and now suddenly Space Station Gaming have found an opening to fight. Panatom deleted by Vote. Nika has found the World Serpent as well. One more crash down onto Netrioid, but the Aegis is used. Not sure the damage was there from Nika anyway. It's a two-front fight here as Yarkor has found a couple of the squishy members of Space Station Gaming, and he's doing a pretty good job of locking a few of them in. The pull back from Shinto is going to set up a kill for Yarkor. And Sanguine want more. That's the ultimate. Down onto Dardes. Rongyu is here playing frontline. It's a two-man show for Sanguine as the escape is back from SSG. Watch out, Shinto in on the rotation. Could be a big difference maker here. Beads by Vote will prevent him from being pulled back through. He's going to plug away some good damage. Sanguine, two members back on the back pedal. Yarkor still in the thick of things. No kills just yet. You got to be kidding me. Pyromancer on the opposite side of the map. Locked down. Nika beneath his tier 1 tower. Rongyu dashes away. Oh my goodness, how there are no kills in that engagement. I couldn't tell you. Yarkor was in that flow state for sure.
Aphrodite, by the way. Dardes keeps everyone alive. That is a ton of player damage at this point in the game to get through. 6k healing for Dardes. But what a fight by Yarkor and Shinto. I mean, Shinto goes really, really aggressive in the middle of that. He actually flickered in and got a big change dance off. That forced Vote speeds. Shinto did so much player damage, found a huge arcane combo by the Alpha Harpy on their side of the map, but it's all because everyone is paying so much attention to Yarkor. And if there's one weakness to the Aphrodite compositions, that yes, she has good damage, but it's not very sustainable. You're kind of just getting it as, you know, you're not chipping someone down. It's all back off here, back off here, back off here. You know, it's bursts of 350, 400 damage. And without a Soul Reaver there for Dardes, he's making sure that Yarkor has really no threat whatsoever, especially with Runic Shield. He's reducing that power, reducing that healing. Dardes can't really afford to be trying to land Lovebirds all the time or land those kisses, because he's just juggling so many different balls on his side, trying to make sure that everyone on Space Station is staying alive. That was impressive from really both sides for there to be a big lack of kills. But Netrioid, instead of joining the fight, goes for the objective, gets some farm for himself. That was very, very smart. And as long as Panatom can recognize now that he has to really respect where Raffer is, because that disruption by that watery grave was impossible for Panatom to really play around. He got insta-killed in that fight, and that fight still went well for Sanguine somehow.
Yep. I am curious, though. If you're Sanguine, you watch something like that, Yarkor is just swinging away on 3-4 members of SSG the entire time. I wonder if that maybe opens your eyes and makes you think, and a lot of it extended, as you pointed out, because of Dardes. I almost wonder now, if you're on Sanguine, you feel like you have to prioritize anti-heal, where you know, maybe you had a Divine Ruin up to this point on Shinto. Maybe some other guys on Sanguine are now thinking, all right, that one went a little bit too long, shouldn't have been that even. Maybe let's get some anti-heal online for ourselves.
Yeah, no cursed Ankh is the real shocker to me. I thought Rongyu, once he hit level 12, would be picking up an Ankh for sure, but no Ankh for him. No Contagion or Pestilence either for Yarkor or Rongyu at this point,
right?
Which is very, very surprising. They need more anti-heal for sure, and they're not getting it from Yarkor. He's building in what probably is going to be a Void Shield. Looks like Rongyu isn't going to be going it either. Contagion builds out of that breastplate tree, not out of this tree. So this is going to be a Midgardian Mail or a Sovereignty or something like that. I think Sanguine could use some more anti-heal at this point for sure. They need more than just Divine and Brawlers. I mean, imagine how much value Yarkor would have gotten there out of a Pestilence or out of a Contagion. Right. That would have been so much effective anti-heal throughout the course of that fight.
I'm standing in between 4 members of SSG for extended periods of time, and also stalling the massive amount of healing they're receiving. There is still a slot for Rongyu to maybe pick up some anti-heal with his final item, but Unfortunately, all relics locked in. Mid-tier 1 tower, though, has been poked away by a few Nene Kappas, thanks to Raffer tossing them in, and maybe consider that one down. Sanguine just trying to extend the time. But, you know, continue to look at builds here, Aggro. It is much the same from Netrioid, and I don't think he's felt the threat. I mean, it's still Raffer, of course, on that Kuzumbo. But, you know, if he's swinging away at Nika, there's no Spectral Armor on him as well. Netrioid, I think, has felt relatively safe going for these final 3 crit items, opting maybe for one more once that Hunter's Blessing goes down.
I think so much of it is how it opens him up to solo objectives by himself and not need any help and let his entire team zone.
Like
Look at this. He finishes Wind Demon and immediately heads towards fire and just tries it out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we can just try, and you don't lose a whole lot of HP for it.
Cherio is going to try to engage here. Did connect on one chain, but that's beads burnt by Shinto, and Rongyu will channel that ultimate, moving himself back and forth, but just a sidestep will result there for Rongyu. So ultimate for ultimate, but it's Palau in exchange for the dropship, as you will, for Rongyu. But continued
And
aggression
beads
though
from
from
Shinto.
Cherio. That's right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Shinto used the beads as well, which is pretty key. Poor Rongyu kind of walks in, is like, "Hey guys, we fighting in here? Oh, I got ulted
Let's go."
right away." He kind of shows up right at the wrong time in order to get hit by that ult, and that's a great play by Cherio because he has full CDR between his Jotuns, his Hydras, and his Erendite, and this is going to allow him to immediately get value out of that ultimate again as soon as it's up, knowing that Shinto has no beats.
I'll talk about a respawning objective that Sanguine can secure. The Fury is certainly one of them. Nice double knock up there from Panatom. Sanguine knocks down the Primal Fury. Yarkor right back into the thick of things. This time results in an easy kill down onto Cherio, whose ultimate had just respawned. Nika down through that World Serpent. Will jump himself up and down, but Raffer knocked down by Shinto. It's a 2 for none and a Fury for Sanguine.
It's just that Sanguine feels like they're breaking all the unwritten rules. Like, so many SPL teams would be saying, okay, well, they know we're doing gold here, so maybe we shouldn't just try and full pull it at this point, but Netrioid just walks up and starts auto-attacking it and lets everybody else do all the zoning work for him. Netrioid is just the objective killer at this point. Everyone else doesn't have to worry about it.
His Fire Giant pulled. Netrioid almost completely as close as he was to being able to solo that in the last game. Ultimates traded out. 3 members of Sanguine suddenly drop-shipped back onto Dardes, who will use the ultimate to stay CC immune there and backs himself away from Shinto, who is looking for the engage. Fire Giant started up one more time. 3, now 5 members of SSG on the map. Instead, it's going to be the Pyromancer looked at. Vote in range will plug away some damage, but Sanguine locks it down. They realize the door had closed on Fire Giant. Let's just take Pyro and stay alive.
That's still risky, though, by Vote. I mean, he was stepping up there with no relics. He's a little bit lucky, I think, that Rongyu didn't just start walking at him. Didn't know exactly where everybody else was from Space Station. Probably thought that Dardes and Nika were coming on the flank instead of just clearing blue buff in order to give that over to Dardes. But Sanguine is playing this as they usually do, but you see this composition coming together for Space Station. Sanguine wants you to take these prolonged fights around fire so Netrioid can try and solo it, so that everyone else can do the damage and poke you out, and then you go, oh, well, fire's already half. We really can't get in there since we are at half HP. But the Aphrodite is keeping them up and healthy. Even though they got 2 picks there, it wasn't enough.
Frapper engaged upon by Rongyu this time, and he has found Netrioid, who's going to actually airstrike away from this one. Thorns popped by Rapper just to extend his life a little bit. Panatom not too worried and will send the Typhoon ripping through. Rapper knocked down. Thorns will not save your life this time. A 5 versus 4 advantage as Fire Giant is eyed.
This time Netrioid's got some help to try and pull it, but still 4 members of Space Station here. Cherio has that ult.
Panatom did blink forward there, looked for the engagement onto Cherio. Palau could move in. Fire Giant down to half health. Cherio finds his way into the back line. Will look to chain a few, has caught a couple. Nika as well, World Serpent in. Rongyu's going to try to pull himself out of this fight, and we are a bit divided here as Rongyu knocked up in the air as Nika's final charge rings out onto the support of Sanguine, but Yarkor instead knocks down Cherio, and Netrioid is just going to swing away. Nika trying to escape, but too much crit for Netrioid. 2 members down. for SSG, and maybe now the Fire Giant will get taken down.
Yarkor has just been unstoppable on this King Arthur, man. No one's been able to get away from him, and now Vote is going to try his hand at it, and what do you know, doesn't succeed again. Just so much space created by Yarkor in this game, and he's always dealing relevant damage, he's always taking relevant damage, and it just never seems to matter. Even with this full pen build from Vote, no chin size, I mean, this is ability-based Uller here for Vote, and it's great at killing squishies and can be okay at killing tanks because the Titan's Bane, but for some reason Yarkor just is taking no damage.
It's nuts, isn't it? I mean, every fight, Yarkor has been in there with every member of SSG and hasn't been worried about it. This is a big swing here, Aggro. Towers taken down, right side Phoenix lost now for Space Station Gaming. An 8K gold differential, 5 members strong with the Fire Giant for Sanguine for about another 3 minutes. Maybe look yourself to this left lane. There's still a tier 1 tower there and a tier 2 tower as well.
Man, this is incredible, isn't it? I mean, Sanguine, I thought they'd be good. I thought that, you know, I was thinking maybe this team could be top 5, top 4, you know, a really good team. I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, if they close out this game, it's really only between them and Radiant so far on who the best team in the league is through 2 weeks, right? I mean, we still have tomorrow's games to go, but just based on the eye test alone, obviously the overall, you know, adjustments are going to be made against this team. Sanguine isn't going to go undefeated this year. Radiance isn't going to go undefeated this year. You can't base the whole year off of the first 2 weeks or so. But if you have to say who the best team is right now, Sanguine has got to be in that conversation, which is just incredible. They have looked unstoppable so far.
Well, you're gonna there might be wins and losses, but you're gonna have to wait until Sunday, May 3rd for Sanguine and Radiance to go toe-to-toe. And this one's not all over just yet. It is a Fury knockdown in Tier 2 tower, as well as the Tier 1 in the left lane. About 2 minutes remaining on that Fire Giant buff. 5 members strong for both teams. 10 relics strong as well for both teams. You're going to be entering a full strength fight here. Only the Guardians left beneath level 20. But Sanguine are going to play this one slow aggro and maybe just wait for another opening.
Now that mid-tier 2 is still looming, so even if they get to the Titan here, it's not going to be super weak, but pretty weak already having that right side Phoenix down. Yarkor is in their nook.
Panatom moves in and maybe pulls back a couple, and where else would you expect Yarkor to be except being obnoxious for SSG? Cherio cannot participate in this Phoenix defense. It is a 4 versus 4 and then maybe a flex for Sanguine as Yarkor can bounce back and forth. Wrongyu moves in. Phoenix melting down. Raffer knocked up, has to use the thorns, and that saves his life this time around. Yarkor still spinning around. Will plug away about half of the health of Cherio and maybe even a little bit lower. The left side Phoenix, I think, likely falls here in this point unless SSG finds themselves a large engagement. Wrongyu does get stunned down. Cherio moves into the backline, up into the ultimate. 5 members of Sanguine just delaying this fight a little bit. Nobody pulled back in by Cherio, and somehow aggro. No kills just yet.
No one, but Netrioid pretty poked out. Yarkor really the only one super healthy, which again, how? He's been in between the Phoenixes this entire time, but no one seems to want to deal any damage to him. Or they want to, but they really just can't. Good hold by SSG on that left side Phoenix, and the big difference is that Soul Reavers are now done for both Nika and Dardes. So that poke that Nika is really putting out, this is a big difference between Yorm at a competitive level, the great Yorm players, and the Yorm players that a lot of the chat might be seeing in their ranked games is pool management. Benji does it really well, Nika does it really well, as 2 of the ones that really stand out to me, where they really, they put their pools in choke points consistently between Gem of Isolation and this Soul Reaver pickup and the Stone of Binding. You're just, you always feel like you're taking more damage than you really should be at any point from these little pools, and those pools basically alone took Netrioid down to 2/3 HP, and then Netrioid crit Raffer with his thorns up, and that took Netrioid down to 15% HP pretty much, and really slowed that siege from Sanguine.
And I think it is worth noting, looking at Nika's build, did pick up spectral armor, so has
Yep.
sold one of the early items he had there and picks up some anti-crit, realizing game one was fruitless maybe without it up against Netrioid. Fire Giant is back up. Remember, this is the same build level that Netrioid was at when he felt like he could solo the Fire Giant, and I imagine will attempt to do so here again, but Space Station will be wary of it. And Space Station might just have to play brute force to prevent just this.
And they don't really have a choice. I mean, Fire Giant's already down below half, and this one's enhanced, so it's even stronger than the last.
This one still getting chipped away by Netrioid, and he actually pulls himself off just for a moment, so Fire Giant not fully healed, but back to half. Down beneath half it ticks, but Rongyu has found an opening to blink into the back line of Space Station Gaming. Raffer's having none of it. Sanguine takes the FG, and that's all thanks to Netrioid and some good zoning. It's a mirror image of game one. The dropship is into the back line of Space Station Gaming. Cheerio separated from the rest of his team, and Nika will World Serpent his way down onto Yarkor. 4 members of Sanguine, they're looking at Cheerio, and they get him. Nika trembles a few, but you're not getting out of this one alive. A double kill from Shinto, 5 members strong with the Fire Giant. Sanguine, they're eyeing the top of the standings.
This is looking clean so far for Sanguine. Netrioid, plenty healthy. Shinto a little bit poked, but still has those relics up. I don't think Sanguine need to worry about anything with the Titan here.
It's a 3-man defense, 2 of the carries, and a Guardian. Raffer down. See you later, Dardes. See you later, Raffer. Vote the last man standing, but it's not going to matter. Titan taken down. Sanguine in 2-0 fashion will knock SSG down a peg and remain tied at the top with Radiance.
Okay, guys, it's week 1. Sanguine only beat Obey. Don't worry, don't everyone get too excited about the Sanguine team. They aren't that good. Yeah, right, dude.
Right.
They just 2-0'd Space Station, one of the best teams in the entire league, and did it in a very, very impressive fashion. Game 1, a little bit of into mode from Vote. You think, okay, he's not going to do that game 2. Okay, he does a little bit of it in game 2. But these are just straight up dubs for this Sanguine squad.
Yeah, right.
You should be prepping for this team like they are the best team in the league, because right now, they just might be.
Yeah, this is not a team stumbling and falling their way into wins. They are methodically taking them. And as such, 2-0, right at the top of the standings 2 weeks in to the SPL. This one's been a lot of fun aggro, but unfortunately, it's all we've got here in set number 1. And as such, we're going to send it back to Finch to break it down.
Thanks, Dolson. Thank you, Aggro. And yeah, that is a huge win for Sanguine, somehow finding a way to shut down Space Station. You can say what you want about Asterisk on game 1, that maybe things got a little bit sloppier, but game 2, that was clean. They put Space Station to bed. And Mifflin, man, I gotta think the only group of guys that are as excited about this Sanguine win as Sanguine are Obey, right? I mean, because now Obey are like, look, we didn't get waxed by nobodies just now. This team is good. They beat us because they're good. And I think this might be good things for them moving forward as well. But Sanguine, putting everybody on notice.
Yeah, Obey really high rolled on that one. But
Yeah.
I'm just so hyped now. This completely changes the dynamic of the league, right? Sanguine was the underdog, but no more. These guys are sitting at the top, challenging the king. These guys playing out of their absolute minds. And I think partially it's due to the fact that maybe they're getting a little bit underestimated by their enemies. I mean, you can't let Rongyu get Horus 2 games in a row like that, popping off completely. Shinto on Merlin twice. I mean, there's almost no respect shown by Space Station in that P's and B's phase, and it comes back to bite them with the cleanest 14-1 game we've saw the entirety of the season so far. Sanguine playing out of their minds.
Yeah, I think Rongyu is something like 0-1-25 across that set. Something pretty close to that is his entire slash line. And he got to play Horus both games and made it look phenomenal. But I think that it would be real. I really want to gas Sanguine. I'm not going to put any asterisk on them. They earned this 2-0 spot they're in. Respect them. But I also think Space Station underperformed here, Mifflin. I don't see any other way to say it. There's times where Nika dies without using his ultimate on the Jormungandr. And I got to assume that's just him thinking that there's no way he dies there. There's times where Vote dies, never using purification beads, right? And it just feels to me like the Space Station team might have underestimated Sanguine. I think there's evidence for it based on how they played.
Yeah, there clearly is. As well as if you just look at Space Station's draft, there's not much cohesion there. Let's say, give them best case scenario, Cheerio finds a 5-man pool. What's the follow-up? A Kuzembo ult? Maybe some Lovebirds from Dardes? I mean, this draft really wasn't primed for success, but even then, Sanguine play incredibly well around the map. they do get a 2-0 lead, and despite that, Space Station does bring it back in the early game, bringing the gold deficit to 0. However, every single fight that happened around the full 5 squad, Sanguine comes out ahead, leagues ahead.
Yep, and I don't think Sanguine get to come away from this unscathed either. I think that we saw their early to mid-game farm clearly had some gaps in it, right? Even when they got up to big leads in terms of kills, Space Station was able to sort of out-farm them. So both of these teams, I think, end up a little bit exposed, but obviously there's no way you don't come away from this hype for what Sanguine are going to be doing in the future. They 2-0 Space Station, who everyone thought was one of the top teams coming into this one right now, Myth. So I don't see any other way to think about it than them as one of the best teams right now.
I mean, there truly is no way to think about it. All evidence points towards a Sanguine season. These guys are going to pop off, and my eyes are going to be glued to them. I can watch Sanguine all day.
They play really well as a team, man, don't they? I mean, all that practice clearly paying off for them. And I want to make sure we're not discounting Radiance as we look at the standings. Obviously, that squad, stocked with talent over there, is another contender for that top spot right now. But Sanguine, I think until we see differently, I have to be considered right there with them. But I think Aggro made a good point. We are still very early on in the year, right? This is week 2, and we still have games to be played tomorrow, another set to be played today as well. So I'm not putting the cart before the horse or anything. I'm not declaring Sanguine, the best team or anything like that. But it's just that you cannot overlook them. You have to make sure that you're giving them your due diligence, that in game when you play against them, you're 100% focused and giving yourself every opportunity to win against this team too, because they will close it out against you if you let them.
They will. Their late game, it truly is the late game. The second they get there, they're so at home. They've got this huge amount of experience. 6 years they've been playing together, this particular group. And they've shown time and time again that they work so well off of each other. Despite weaknesses in the early game, they're willing to work around it. Despite weaknesses around playing the map and farming, it doesn't matter. Because the second that they're able to work as a cohesive unit in the late game, they're gonna pop off. I mean, we saw it against Obey. We saw it today against SSG. There's so much more that Sanguine can show us, and I'm excited to see it.
And this is what the start of their journey looks like. Their first test was you've been put in the SPL with all these good teams. Can you win games against them? They've answered it. But now the question becomes, what about when teams start focusing you specifically? When they come in strats, not just for Sanguine, but for Shinto or for Netrioid to take them out of the game. How do they respond to that? I think we're only really reading chapters 1 and 2 of what's going to eventually be a great whole book series for Sanguine. We've talked enough, Mifflin, I think, about what's going on with Sanguine. I want to hear from the guys themselves. Netrioid is standing by for the interview.
Yeah,
Thank
hello.
you, Finch. Netrioid joins me, the First Blood King here in this set, apparently. First of all, congratulations, the big 2-0 for you guys here today. But that early game, specifically for you and Rongyu in that duo lane, just working both games, game 1, game 2. What is it that just seemed to work so well for you guys that allowed you kind of to snowball things in game 1 and even find a couple of kills in game 2?
Well, I think it was most the confidence we have in the dual lane with Rongyu, I think. So we just say something like, okay, I think we can kill here, and if it doesn't happen, okay, we'll just learn from our errors or mistakes. That's the confidence, I think.
It seems like you guys have some of the tightest synergy, at least in this league. That's been one of the big talking points when we talk about you guys. Do you agree with a statement like that? I mean, you guys obviously play together so heavily. Would you say, as far as team chemistry goes, you would see yourself towards the top of the league?
Yes, I can say that for sure. I love my team. I love the way we play. I love the way they always communicate to each other. We always follow the comms that they say. So, yeah, I'm really confident of saying that we have the best team fight right now.
I agree, and it's just so clear. You can see clean lines of communication, very easy fights to follow there for you guys. I am curious, though. I mean, picks and bans from game 1 to game 2, largely unchanged for you guys. Maybe a slight swap in the jungle there. Were you surprised at all that SSG gave you a very similar draft to game 1? I assume as a team you're just saying, okay, we'll take the same comp that we just had.
Yeah, exactly. As we were banning, they were banning the same things, and we were like, okay, maybe they have to run something different, but just with one pick. Let's do the same, and let's see what they pick. And they were picking like the same gods over the same gods, and we were like, okay, let's do it again.
Yeah, and it worked again, and long, but still concise and calculated, I think, for you guys. Final question, obviously on top of the standings here, 2 weeks in, you have a game next week against Rival. That'll be a big one. Do you feel like underdogs anymore at this point, or do you think that you guys could take this fight to literally anyone in the SPL?
I think it's just the beginning. We have many things to learn, and yeah, we are gonna be still the underdogs because we just joined the SPL, and I think there are many good teams right now. We will struggle, I think, as any other team will do, but hopefully everything turns in our favor.
I agree, and it seems like you guys have a great mindset going into it. The team chemistry, the friendship is all there, the foundation, and a perfect start to the SPL for you guys. Netrioid, thanks for sitting down with me. Congratulations on the 2-0 here today. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the first set we've got today. We'll be right back with Knights against Obey.
Thank you.
I won't let it die. I can feel you when you're not around. When the night gets cold, we won't be alone.
And just like that, we're back. You're still watching the SPL Week 2, Day 2. This time, though, we've got Pittsburgh Knights and Obey to round out this fine Saturday. My name is Dolson Mifflin, still with me to talk SPL today. And Miff, what a set we just had. The string of 2-0s continues, and it's Sanguine who are on top after set 1.
They are. They certainly are. However, Obey, Finch brought it up, the biggest beneficiary maybe outside of Sanguine is Obey from that last set, but that only stands true if Obey can find their first win here today against PK.
I agree, and that's who we've got. And then tomorrow we'll have a United Renegades to start off the day. I think this is a big matchup, though, for both of these teams, and to kind of just continue on that Obey conversation. And again, looking at these standings, kind of the opposite of what we saw in our previous set, where Sanguine SSG fighting to remain undefeated, granted only through 2 weeks. Pittsburgh Knights and Obey both looking for their first win. It's hard to say. I mean, obviously every team, every game, so important. But why would you argue, or do you think it's maybe more important for Obey to now grab their first win here in this matchup?
I think it is fair to say that Obey might have a little bit more pressure put on them today simply because of Sanguine's performance. Yes, I mean, PK is the favorite, community favorite, as well as I think even on the caster team, we probably favor PK here simply because if you look at the rosters and how they play, Obey has a very similar playstyle to PK. They all have very aggressive playstyles. I mean, Belair and Ducky are some of the most aggressive soul laners in the league. Zapman and Wowie, both very mechanical players out of that Hunter role. So I think that there is a bit of a question mark on which one of these guys is going to come out ahead. However, I think Obey has that added pressure of having to prove themselves in the league now.
Yep, I agree. And I think you look at kind of this core of Obey, Ducky, Weekend, Wowie, 3 guys that were together throughout last year. Then you add in Inbound, you add in Wolfie. What have you made of those 2 new additions here for the Obey roster?
I mean, I hate to say it. I'm a huge fan of Inbound as a person. I love Bobby, okay? I'm going to say it right now. But the performance we saw last week from everyone from Obey, every single one of them, I wasn't personally impressed. Individually as players, I can't with 100% approval rate say that they are SPL caliber, SPL ready, but that could be due to this growing pain of this new squad. Maybe they aren't really comfortable playing off of each other. Maybe it's this new leadership. I don't know what exactly it is, but I think if they want to prove themselves, today is the day to do it.
Do think one thing I took away from week 1 is that this roster has a lot of talent that can be built on and should be built on as this split goes on. But one of those remaining members is Ducky, and we were able to sit down with him and hear his thoughts prior to this big matchup.
I'm here with Ducky, solo laner for Obey. And Ducky, the first thing I got to ask you about, man, is last week. I know that you all didn't get the result that you wanted for, but talk to me a bit about what happened and how the squad's planning on bouncing back this week.
Well, we lost. That wasn't great. We don't want to do that. So I don't know. I feel like we played the early game pretty well, and then after that, it just kind of went downhill. Usually ran Gold Fury fights, I think, is where we kind of scuffed our lead. So I think, like, going into this week, we practiced the objectives per se, and like going in, not inting after getting objectives or when going for them. Like, have a clear plan going into it. So hopefully, it's cleaned up for this week's games. I'd like to think.
Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how you all end up playing. Talk to me a little bit, because you're going to be laning up against Scary in the solo lane, right? What's it like laning against him in particular from your experience with him in the past? And can I expect you to find some solo kills or something like that over there for me?
Oh, I doubt it. I think I'd be getting smacked by Scary. He plays, like, really aggressive characters. Like, he was, like, I think one of the first to pick Camazots a lot. I could be, like, just talking out. Oh, I can't say that. Just... making stuff up, but I'm pretty sure he was like a very prominent Camazots player, and he plays a lot of aggressive picks like Achilles as well. So I'm gonna be playing into that. So hopefully I don't die. That would suck. Chat would meme me. Don't want that happening. Kurt has enough of that already. So hopefully, I just play the lane safe, no deaths here and there, and we'll just transition that into late game.
Yeah, that's a good point. Weekend's kind of the lightning rod, right? So all of that extra attention kind of goes to him. Well, what's it like with Inbound? Because I feel like you guys are the ones juggling all the frontline responsibilities, and he's so aggressive. Like, he's always in there in the backline mixing things up. How do you all kind of split up those responsibilities, and what's it like working with him?
Usually in the comms, you'll hear Bobby like, "Yo, this is a free pick. This is a free pick, guys. He's by himself, and he's got 5 teammates behind him, just waiting." So we have to just. It's Bobby saying, "Yo, go in, go in, go in," and everyone else saying, "No, Bobby, back up," because he doesn't stop going in. If we didn't
No.
call him back, I don't think he'd have under 10 deaths every game. So bless his heart, he's helping us play more aggressive, which I think we need. But yeah, it's a lot of just was it tug of war? There we go. It's a good
Sure.
term for it.
I think it's easier to kind of reel someone in than help them get more aggressive. So you all will be able to lock that one in. Well, I appreciate you talking here with us, Ducky, for a little while. Good luck in your set here. It's a big one up against the Knights, and we'll be looking forward to watching y'all play.
All right, thank you very much.
I don't know how you don't just love Ducky. What a personality, what a guy, and I love the point that he makes about inbound. There is maybe overly aggressive at some points, but I agree. Then with Finch is once you dial that in, we're in a nice middle ground. Mifflin, I know you're probably one of the biggest Ducky fans there is out there, and maybe unfortunate you couldn't do that interview. But did you like what you heard out of Ducky prior to this big game?
I liked what I heard out of Ducky. I don't think there's a single fan in the audience that didn't love everything that came out of Ducky's mouth there. He's such a likable dude. And it is because he's Ducky. He's got that Ducky X factor. And truth told, Ducky on this squad from Obey, it's so good to see that he's humble, but he is the sole member of Obey that has been performing leagues above the rest of his team.
Sure.
If his squad is failing around fights or on the gold for you can trust that Ducky's going to at least have his lane on lock, or he's going to be performing above what you would think from his station. So I think that seeing him being humble and being able to work with his team is fantastic for the future of Obey, because it is going to be a tumultuous start. It has been a tumultuous start, and they need to continue trucking on and improving as a squad. So I think that mentality is going to be very healthy.
Now, I want to pivot and look at the Knights as well, and maybe right on the back of something Ducky talked about in that interview. You look at Scary D. Do you think that matchup maybe goes the way Ducky thinks that it is, where Scary D maybe just has that edge in the solo lane?
I mean, I've personally teamed with Scary D, and I had a similar experience as Ducky did with Inbound in that Scary D was very hard for me to pull back. He would continually go in and he would attack, and you would literally have to beg him to stop. So if Scary can get his ball rolling and really start to put the kibosh into Ducky, it's going to be hard to stop that pressure from continually flowing out. But if Ducky says that he's willing to play back and safe in lane and show a lot of respect there, it's going to be hard for Scary D to find those dives. And I imagine if they know that he's going to be playing aggressive, Weekend should be in the wings ready to get any sort of counter engagement going.
I am curious, Mifflin. Obviously a big conversation about Obey has been around Inbound. Do you think there's a big difference maybe in this matchup between Neilma in that Guardian role? I think Neilma, a fantastic player, Inbound as well. But do you think there's a play style difference there, maybe a mechanical skill difference as a point that the Knights will be able to take advantage of?
I think that both of those players are known for their aggressiveness. Neil, a little bit more refined in his playstyle, tries to go a little bit aggressive, but he is going to be able to pull back when he needs to. I don't think that he necessarily needs the majority of his team yelling at him like Inbound does. But I think that if Inbound continues to play as aggressively as he did last week, he will see a lot more pressure onto himself, which might be decent. That's how he played on Hype Unit when he was on the Xbox. He would be the lightning rod for all the aggression on his team, and it would allow these hyper carry players to farm out and get him into that late game. So maybe if that's the plan, power to him. It's going to fit his playstyle perfectly, but I would like to see him reel it in a little bit as Ducky was asking for, and maybe play a little bit more smart.
And Neilma, obviously world champion, same out of 4 out of 5 members of this Pittsburgh Knights roster, and wouldn't you guess it, we had Neilma sit down and talk to us about this matchup versus Obey.
Well, I'm here with Neil, support for the Knights. Defending world champion Neil, I feel like I should say. And Neil, I want to ask you first about last week. I'm sure you don't want to talk too much about it, but talk to me a little bit about what happened. I mean, you guys had the crazy base race and everything. It was so close. How are you guys planning on bouncing back from that set?
Yeah, the set against Radiance is a little bit unfortunate, I think. I think that in the second game especially, we kind of took one bad fight, and that's kind of Smite. Sometimes you just lose off of one fight, and I think that we probably didn't draft or play the way we should have. I think we kind of just got caught up in trying something kind of on the fly, which isn't really something you should do. It wasn't really something we practiced too much, so I think we kind of got enamored and kind of beat ourselves a little bit. Not to take away anything from them. I think they played really well, but I think that we didn't do ourselves any favors either. But I think this week we're just going to plan on kind of doing things we've done in practice more so, just trying to stick to something a little bit more planned, I guess, yeah. And I think Obey, they're not a team to be taken lightly. I don't think any team is, but I think it'll be good for us to kind of bounce back and show everyone what we can do. And when we have a little bit more of a plan, what's gonna happen to the rest of the league. So.
Yeah, I mean, it might not look like it on the scorecard, but they were really close games, both of them, right? And you were really even ahead in game one, so I know that you guys can bounce back. You're going to be matching up against Inbound in particular, though, right? Against Obey in the support role, and he is so aggressive. He loves to dive, get into the thick of things right from minute one. How are you going to kind of match his pace, or are you guys maybe just going to let him sort of hang himself, so to speak, by getting too aggressive?
I don't think we're really game planning for any one player in particular. I think that there are a lot of aggressive sports in the league, so it's not really anything new. I just think that maybe I'll call him in Discord before and give him a little Bobby like that, just, keep him on his toes. But I don't know. Bobby's a good guy, a great player, and I don't think we're really game planning for anyone. I think that it's something to keep in mind for sure that he might pick something aggressive, like I think he played Fender last week. Just something to keep in mind, picks and bans, but nothing really that I'm going to be trying to play around too much. I think we're just going to try and play our own game more so.
Well, how's the squad meshing around Cubo? I mean, I know that's kind of the one swap for you all is that jungle role. How do you all feel like the squad's kind of meshing around him?
I think that everything's going really well. I think in week one and maybe a couple weeks ago in practice, we're having a little bit of trouble, I guess, meshing. But I think over the last couple of weeks, we've come a long way, especially just in how we want to play the map and how we want to team fight. And I think it's kind of more reminiscent to last season than the year where everyone's kind of on the same page and everybody knows what their job is. So far, so good with Fred, and I think it's only onwards and upwards from here.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us. Good luck in your matches. I'm looking forward to seeing Neil out there on the battleground.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's a great mindset for Neoma and the rest of the Knights to have. Week one, you're going up against a very, very strong team in Radiance, but you can't shrug off Obey at this point. Any team in this league can absolutely find themselves some wins. And I think you would probably agree with some of those statements as well, Mifflin, that the Knights just need to get back to playing their game and put their best foot forward instead of playing maybe as reactionary as they did in week one.
Yeah, I like that evaluation. PK knows that they're a roster that are capable of greatness, so I think getting in your own head is the only thing that could really hold them back. So it seems like from that interview, they've got a base level of confidence that they are able to play their own game. They're going to win no matter who it is. And I think that's a great place to be in. I'm a huge proponent of teams finding their own sort of dynamic, their own true game plan, their own identity, if you would. And if PK's got it, they're going to have it, and I think it's something to be worried about if I'm on Obey.
Well, some of that Obey identity is, of course, in that support role, and I wonder if any of that trickles in here to picks and bans. Obviously, Neoma saying that the Knights are going to be prepared for Inbound to play something a little bit different, a little bit more aggressive, but I don't think there's anything tried and true enough just yet that Inbound plays that would maybe warrant a full and complete ban by the Knights.
I think even if you are forcing all of your bans on a one character like Inbound, even he is the one with the most defined playstyle, and it is that unbridled aggression. If PK were to focus too many bans on him, it could let too much through. So I think, again, that's playing into the fact that they're willing to play their own game and not worry too much about Bobby. I think that's huge for them. That's already a win in the mental. And we see that the bans are going to be pretty standard here. Hell, Yamoja banned out by Obey, Circuit and Jormungandr by PK. All guys that have been highly valued through the SPL.
I do have to ask, though, Mifflin, and you bring up the Hell, and, maybe it's because she was so not really picked maybe a little bit in the pre-weeks leading into the SPL. Why are we now seeing her just suddenly insta-banned effectively in every set?
It's likely to do with the fact that these games have been going a lot longer than we saw in Season 6. We're seeing 30-minute bangers, 45-minute games, stuff like that. And if the game's going to go that long, you might as well pick a god that's going to flourish in that late-game phase, and that is Hell. She brings us huge damage output as well as the healing for sustained longer team fights. So I think banning her out is going to be pretty decent there, as well as we've seen a shift towards healing in general. Yamoja's a top pick. Aphrodite's seeing a lot of play. We're seeing Horus picked up now. It seems like we're really moving into a more healer-centric meta.
Right. And Aphrodite just played in Game 2 of set number 1 today. King Arthur banned out by the Knights, and as Ducky brought up in his interview, Scary D is one that will play that Camazotz. I think anyone would in that solo lane if Camazotz makes it through. But I think an interesting point to make is this is not guaranteed to be a solo lane Camazotz just yet. There's enough flexibility in that god, at least between solo and jungle, that the Knights could still have a separate pick up their sleeve.
That is smart to point out. Camazotz getting picked up early really doesn't show your hand at all, besides the fact that you have a Camazotz. As you said, it could go to a solo, it could go towards the jungle. We've even seen it played occasionally at the lower level in that long lane, so it could go just about anywhere. And this Odin, continuing that flex pick mentality, he could jungle, he could solo as well, so Obey might try and shift their focus towards banning out Hunters on the second ban phase instead of looking towards Guardians, because Odin could be played in that support role, he could be played in solo. We just don't know yet.
What do you make of the Hercules and Thor locked in, though, for Obey? I mean, that just kind of yells aggression to me, which is maybe what we've come to expect here from Obey. I mean, the moment that Anvil of Dawn is leveled up into, expect it to be used. Hercules can provide some good initiation, some good damage as well. What do you make of those two picks, and why maybe first overall there for Obey?
I'll break it down in pieces, right? Let's take this Hercules.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought him up because it completely glossed over my mind because it made so much sense to me that Obey is going to be focusing this Hercules pick simply because of what we've seen from Inbound. That's the traditional aggressive support. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see a level 1 invade around that speed buff from Bobby just running it down there. But that Thor pick, I do like a lot. It seems like Obey's been struggling in that mid-game team fight phase and getting into the fights as a cohesive unit. Thor's going to be able to close that gap up just a little bit with the Anvil of Dawn. So if Gold Fury gets picked up by a PK, it's going to open up the door for Thor to find this huge dunk. Or even if he gets out-rotated a little bit, it will cover that gap as well. So I like all these picks so far. And the Raijin on her, it's just, I'm seeing aggression. That's all I'm seeing from Obey right now. It seems like they're really going to lean into that early game aggressive play style.
Hey, if you can't beat him, join him. Obey are going to try to ban out some of those higher tier Hunters with their final 2 bans between the X-Ball and the Uller, and then PK in turn are going to ban out the Hu Yi, but it's a Hachiman locked in here for the Knights. What do you make of that composition that the Knights have picked up for themselves? I mean, strictly looking at a tier list, they've got some good gods.
If we were on the Reddit right now, people would be losing their minds because all 5 of these picks are very near the top of that community tier list, but I love the draft. Odin's going to bring a lot of control in these team fights, as is Hunbots. If they use their ultimates in conjunction, it's a huge amount of lockdown. Camazotz is going to bring the sustain and damage as well as this backline dive, so it's going to be very easy for him to open the door for Merlin to find his damage in the enemy team's backline. And Hachiman, although doesn't really have a clear defined role in lane, he is one of the safest picks possible.
Well, the Knights might have to weather the storm that Obey could be bringing here in this early game. Both teams looking for a win. Game 1, let's go.
Thanks, Dolson and Mifflin. It's Finch and Gormizer as we move into game number 1 between the Knights and Obey. And nary a Guardian to be found on the map here. Instead, the Warriors will be handling the frontlining duties here, Gormizer. And Odin in particular, he's so permabanned right now, you don't even get used to seeing this guy come through anymore. But it's in Neil Ma's very capable hands. How do you like these 2 drafts we're looking at?
Man, I'm trying to figure out which support's going to be more aggressive here. I mean, I know they covered it in the interviews, they covered it on the desk, and Neil and Inbound both like to play aggressive, but you don't get much more aggressive than a Hercules or an Odin. Odin having that long-range stun now, if you're not familiar with him in Season 7, it makes a huge difference in the duo lane. And then Hercules is Hercules, a knockback, a pushback, whatever, the amount of control. As long as Inbound can hit his abilities in late game, then you can expect some deaths to be coming out. And I hope you're ready, Finch, because this feels like it should be a high-kill game with how aggressive these teams want to play.
And then potentially a high kill long lane as well here in duo. As I noticed in the first set, we're getting a traditional duo lane back, aren't we? None of these supports doing any aggressive invades. Inbound slowed, taking a bunch of early damage. First blood for Neoma as he shuts down Inbound, and Pittsburgh Knights get on the board first. And that can happen with all this aggression that's been picked. Bobby's got to make sure he's being a bit more careful.
Yeah, it's going to be moments like that. I mean, if Wowie hits to level 3, 4, even before he has his ult online, his kill potential skyrockets, right? Being able to get the pillar stun or try and line him up with the wall when Inbound is there. But right now, this is a dangerous position. I like the stun from Neil, but I don't know. They're still in danger.
No, that's so clean from the Knights, dude. They get in there perfectly. Bobby returns as fast as possible. I assume he driving strikes on a base. He blinks to catch up. And then Neoma lands the perfect spear to stun him for the confirmation on the buff as well. And then the Knights played this cleanly. I think that Neoma was the one in particular who really elevated his gameplay as part of their Worlds run. I think he was the one that stepped up the most for them and really would have been second to Sam for me in my voting for the MVP. And Neil's showing us some of that now just with this early game, properly punishing Inbound and getting off to a really good start.
especially with how aggressive someone like Inbound needs to be. Now that he's behind, even more so, right? They need a pick, they need a kill, they maybe just need a gank to try and set them up. But if Neil can continually hit these stuns, especially right after a knock-up from Inbound or potentially grabbing him like in the middle of a driving strike, just making him waste those cooldowns and essentially turn Inbound's aggression against him, stun him out now that he's out of position and lock him down, those moments are going to determine this duo lane. And the fact that you're going to be able to help get Zap ahead is exactly what Zap wants, right? I mean, he wants to be able to play loose and free, and the best way for him to do that is if he has a 2-level lead over Wowie, both of them mechanically solid, but if you can let Zap have that lead and continue to just kind of bang out that lane and continue getting wins in either 1v1s or just farming wins, then it's all going to go smooth on the left side of the map. And then you have to turn your eyes towards like the Scary D Ducky matchup and how that one's going to see where exactly Knights and Obey are going to maybe break apart.
I mean, that's a good point. Weekend has struggled, right, for Obey. So let's say that Zapman does continue to get a lead and you take the left lane out as a viable gank option for him, sort of as you're alluding to, then where does Weekend end up going? That's how things get harder for your jungler. It's not just your jungler being bad at Smite. These junglers are all excellent, right? What's happening is that when your side lanes are losing all the time, there are less viable options for you to go, and the jungle really struggles in that kind of situation. So I think that you're right. It's important in the long lane, not just because Zapman gets ahead, but because it could have this cascading effect down to make life harder on Weekend.
And it's this awkward spot, like, I mean, you're Thor, right? You have a pretty decent amount of damage, but you're not, like, the guy who's going to solo carry the entire game. You have so much setup and so much damage to enable everyone on your team, but who are you going to gank? The Camazotz that's going to heal everything really fast? Or maybe, if the duo lane keeps going this way, the guy who's got a level advantage. Like, it just becomes difficult to decide. Then you're almost locked into mid, and it's moments like that where the decision-making, I think, for Obey are going to be very big. And that's looking, 10 minutes, 15 minutes even into the future for them. So they still have a good chance to maybe try and divert this back onto the rails for themselves. But you have to figure out where you want to put that effort, because again, Scary D is not going to have a lot of issues. I think you'd have to get rid of Zapman.
That's a big pull into the Impale. Zapman in some trouble. Never uses beads anywhere in that. Is calm that he'll be able to make it out. Neil gives him the information to come all the way back around the safe way. Now he steps up, not worried about potentially getting pulled here again. But this is what makes the Knights so tough. Even when you do find some good execution, they do not blink. They don't show any nervousness. Neil Mal now pinned. The Impale, or rather the Leap, comes in to keep the CC chain going. There is no Impale. Neil Mal makes it out. He steps in again, uses the Horrific, and he ends up paying for it. Wow, he finds the Impale, but that's because Cubo Fred was rotating in. But without an ult, there's just not a lot he can do here, and Obey end up getting away with one.
Oh, now Weekend's in the jungle. He's looking for something, and they don't need to find too much out of this. Getting that kill, getting this pressure is going to be solid, but there's going to be a solo kill. Scary D's pretty deep on the right-hand side.
Yeah, finds that kill on the Ducky, and that can happen, man. Amaterasu does not have a lot of pressure early in the game, and Camazotz has pressure always. And I feel a bit bad for that. I asked Ducky in the interview, am I going to get any solo kills from you on the Scary? And he said, no, likely it'll happen the other way around, and unfortunately, that's how it started.
And that's just going to be the prowess. They mentioned it on the desk coming into this. You have 4 picks on the Knights that are often banned, sometimes banned every game like that we have seen. We have Odin kind of slipping through, even though he's been missed for a little bit. Neil Ma's showing why he's been so potent. It's what he can do early on, even in moments like this where they're going to get aggressive.
Well, everyone's slowed. You just cannot miss that ultimate, and Zapman gets one of the easiest kills of his life. They actually hit both Wowie and Inbound and forced Inbound out. And this is a tough start now, Gore, for this long lane, right? I mean, Inbound needs to be able... The whole reason you're picking this Hercules is so that you could be the one that's rotating around the map, applying all this extra pressure, being another sort of kill force, an engage source for your team. I don't know if he can be that if he ends up falling behind like this.
And that, I think, is the biggest thing, right? You need someone who's going to be able to be pressure for you. And I think on both sides, you have someone that you can rely on, right? Last week, we didn't see Wolfie, even though we had mentioned, and Weekend had mentioned that they wanted to kind of play around Wolfie. It seemed like Wowie was the one more or less stepping into that role. Wolfie playing things like Nuwa, being a little bit more utility. Here on the Raijin has a little bit more potential to carry. But you look at Paul, he's going to be able to burn things down. But you can fall back on Cuvo, you can fall back on Zapman, and if Zapman's going to be comfortable in the lane, look, the guy's been playing Smite for 8 years. There's a reason he still has his beads, even though he was stun-locked against a wall just a couple of minutes ago. It's just, he has a temperament around him where he recognizes, like, he just has to play Smite. He's in a zone. and then everyone else around his team can get aggressive. If Neil gets aggressive, Zap can go in and play with him. And that kind of synergy that the Knights have going in with them for this year, I think is just going to cause Obey to be playing off just slightly off kilter, right? Just a little bit off pace from where they want to be.
Weekend has spent a lot of time in about that exact spot that he's in right now. He was here in time, I think, for the red buff invade. Didn't look for it. Didn't look for this gank either. There's really not a lot of farm up for him on his side of the map, so I don't think he's wasting time, so to speak. But he certainly was looking for something, and the Knights stayed defensive underneath their tier 1 with their positioning, so he didn't find anything there, and he ends up rejoining Wolfie. It's just a bit curious. I was expecting there might be some kind of gank there, but instead Weekend just kind of ends up nearby, and it's just not. It doesn't materialize for him.
It was a very interesting dynamic we saw last week out of Obey and out of the Knights, honestly. Both Cuvo and Weekend kind of farmed more than they went for any ganks, than any kind of frags they were looking for, which is a little slower pace than I think either of us would expect out of these two junglers. And I've seen Cuvo like kind of poking his head into the lane, but even now you see him like, okay, cool, I'm going to come split this wave, then I'm going to go back to the camps, then I'm going to go to this camp. Like, it's just very methodical right now, focused on the farm. And it's very similar to what we got to see, I would argue, out of like an EU meta if you go to years past when we were online in Europe, where it's just farm until you get to 20 minutes and all of a sudden whoever wins that fight gets the next big objective.
Well, Scary could be in some trouble. He's been aggressive all game, but in comes Weekend to try and help out. The wall's done good. The silence keeps the CC chain going. He leaps for the heal. Now uses Bat Out of Hell for the disengage. Cuba Fred is here, and meanwhile, Neo Ma gets the kill on the Wowie. Cuba has to use the Fear No Evil for Peel, but Scary D's in trouble. No, Weekend instead dunks onto the full HP Cubo Fred. Some follow-up damage comes through, and Weekend ends up paying for it. Cubo Fred gets the kill, plus they got the one on Wowie in long lane.
That goes about as poorly for Obey as you can imagine. And it's not anything they necessarily did. That is the Knights playing together in any way possible. Scary D, again, on this Camazotz is going to be difficult to kill. That is the essence of Camazotz. The fact that they're willing to throw a Fear No Evil just appeal for him. Weekend just being outside of range, not being able to dunk onto Scary D, forced to go on Cuvo. Maybe you just don't go in there, right? Maybe that's the only decision you can make. But at that point, you've committed to this gank. You won something. And unfortunately, Paul and Neil happen to be rotating as well. Like, there's just too much going on from the Knights. Reading those calls coming into it, it just opened up the door. And like you said, since they got that kill onto Wowie, it's nothing but a net win for the Knights. And now they've found themselves a really solid lead for 8 minutes.
This is a brutal start for Obey. I mean, I don't know any other way to kind of put it, Gormizer. Scary D forces their hand by moving up. And by the way, if you're playing your games at home in solo lane and you have pressure and you're just kind of standing in solo, you're doing it wrong. You do want to proxy the way that Scary does. You do want to force people to rotate, and that's how you exert your pressure on the map. And that's exactly what Scary does. He forces Weekend to rotate when he doesn't really want to, force him to make a tough decision where there really isn't much winning. And Pittsburgh Knights, with the rotations coming, end up being on top. I think that Scary has played this game really well. So has Neil, for my money, too, on this Odin so far, and Obey haven't been able to answer so far these first 9 minutes.
I mean, you can tell that they're playing incredibly well. Scary has a level lead, and that's going to be one thing. About a level and a half, almost 2 levels for Cuvo Fred in the jungle, which is making a huge difference as to where we can see Weekend be impactful. But because the duo lane's so far ahead, Cuvo Fred, can look anywhere he wants to, even onto Wolfie.
Cubo Fred might be able to get it. The Tycho drums would have put the fear into Cubo Fred, but he had the beads on tap and ready. Gets right through him and shuts down Wolfie. That's Wolfie's first death of the game. Now it's a red buff invade for the Knights as Cubo Fred takes that one quite cleanly. Neil steps up to make sure Wowie cannot come in to contest, and Pittsburgh Knights just control the whole map. It's a 5,000 gold lead, nearly 5,000, 9.5 minutes in.
Man, Finch, this is exactly what you expect. When you go for a composition that wants to be aggressive, much like the Knights have, then it wins even harder from ahead, right? You get this huge of a lead, and then you pull a Gold Fury like it's nothing. You have Scary D zoning 2 on his own on the right-hand side. Like, you get this 5,000 gold lead, and you are not scared of anything. The problem is Obey, also with a very aggressive draft, are feeling the downside of it, which is if you fall behind, it hurts. You don't necessarily have a Guardian who's easily capable of jumping in and setting kills up for you, and because inbound is going to be just, at this point, just as easy of a target as pretty much anybody else on the team, it's difficult to find these picks and find the fights they need to for Obey to get back in. Objectives around Pyro, around, well, unfortunately for them, a Gold Fury that's now gone, Fire Giant, those are going to be the big pillars that can turn the game back in their favor. but they have to be present for him. And that last Gold Fury just went completely either under the radar, or they just recognized that maybe they can't win that fight.
Yeah, I don't know. Either way, they could not make the call to get in there, and the Knights end up grabbing the first Fury of the game. I like the way you break down the difference in the aggression here, though. These are both aggressive comps, as Odin showing you can hold that Gungnir's Might for the stun until you need it, by the way. But I don't think that Obey are as aggressive, right? Raijin, we talk about all the time, struggles in the early game. Amaterasu does too. And that's it. Everything else on Obey's draft is aggressive. It's just that that's not enough because everything on the Knights draft is aggressive, right? Everything on the Knights draft is ready to start fighting right away. And it's really worked for them in the early game. And that first kill into inbound, I really do think that was really, really important for them because they've controlled this left side of the map. They forced Weaken to go look to try and help out and right, and that didn't work either because Scary had to lead with the Camazots.
Yeah, it's the glorious play that they've had from the first minute of this game has allowed Cuvo freedom that has then tightened the bracers around Weaken's wrist, right? Like, he cannot go anywhere, or else you'll run into something like that.
Oh, at my speed buff, an Unbots with Fear No Evil just for me? Fine, I guess. And this is why I think people give Weaken too hard of a time on this Obey roster. I'm not saying that he's played like really well or he hasn't had, what I'm saying is he hasn't had a chance to do anything yet this game. Right? I really just I don't think it comes down to him. It's that there's been so much pressure everywhere else that I don't know that he's had a ton of interaction points so far, and instead he's getting bullied as Wolfie's forced to the ultimate. Weaken comes back to try and help him, but you cannot peel Bad out of hell. That's good damage. Wolfie manages to survive. Inbound has to use the slow to try and get everyone away. Scary D's low too, but the flames from Paul burn too hot, and Inbound ends up falling.
Man, if Scary D walks out with that low health again, like I'm tilted if I'm Obey, right? Just because it's just he seems so easy to kill, but that's the problem that comes out of Camazots. And again, I think that's going to be the thing I harp on the most this game. There's a reason we've seen a lot of people banning him in the top 6, and that is just because trying to kill him is a pain. And whether or not he gets the kill on you, he's zoning you out. I mean, Wolfie has no chance to even be a part of that fight because Scary D immediately goes in on him.
811 damage. Gore.
Yeah. You burn Paul's beads, that's a big win for you, but does it really matter if you're losing the kills 7-1, if you're down 6,000, almost 7,000 gold? Like, what do you do when you're having to deal with this Camazots? And the answer is you have to commit 3 people to him and just hope that that's enough, and hope that you can win the follow-up fight after committing 3 people to one person.
You're exactly right. I love that you point out how well he zones Wolfie out of the fight. That's what has me looking down his player damage and how incredibly low it is. I mean, it's not as if there's a ton of damage from Paul either, right? But it's like, in that fight, there's just no way that Wolfie can step up and use that taiko drum as part of that fight at all. He has to use it to barely keep himself alive. And it doesn't even really do that great of a job of that. He does end up living, but he has to go right back to base. So the Knights now firmly in control. It's about 7,000 gold or so that they're in the lead. They've already gotten every neutral objective that's on the map for now, so they've been reduced to stealing Alpha Harpies away from the Chaos side of the map. I mean, at this point, the Knights are doing just about whatever they want. And if Obey are going to win, to me, it's going to come down to like an overcommitment on an objective or something like that. Gore, do you see what's the path back in here for Obey?
Honestly, it is coming up around this Fury. Like, you see the pings coming out, you see the wards coming out. If you can win a fight around this Fury, even though it looks like it's going to be a Primal Fury, it's not going to, like, change the game state drastically. You just need something, right? A little bit of XP, a little bit of gold that can then translate to other objectives on the map. You win this one, all of a sudden maybe you can look at the tier 1 in left or the tier 1 in mid, right? It opens that door just enough for you to slip through. You lose this Fury, then, well, nothing necessarily goes worse for you. You just don't get anything back in. You have to wait for the Pyromancer or Fire Giant fight. Because otherwise, there's not a big grouping. There's not a chance to pick the Knights apart, other than maybe going for something on the left-hand side of the map. Because after that early aggression, we haven't really gotten to see anything out of Zapman and Wowie. They get a couple of kills here and there, and now that he's got a lead, he's just coasting with it.
Scary D has been locked down, but he still has the bat out of hell. So the Taiko drums comes out, and Scary D trades it for his own ultimate and makes it out of there. Again, like you said, even when they commit 2 members just to killing Scary D, it's not enough because he's level 16, the most farmed on the map right now, and he's just too hard to kill at this point. Now they won't have one of their best teamfight ultimates in the Taiko drums for this next Fury fight. I don't even know if Obey can stick around for it.
Well, and you pointed it out earlier, right? Now you have Wolfie back on par with kind of the rest of his team, at least, in terms of player damage. But that was the one thing, like, you see Scary D zoning him out, Wolfie wasn't able to do a ton of damage because of that. But when you look at it, normally the Warriors are supposed to be close. The solo laners are supposed to be close from boxing matches. There's a 7,000 damage gap between Scary D and
He's
Ducky,
kind of breaking the
people.
graph.
It's just, he's non-stop, relentless aggression coming from the solo laner. And even now, he's not even a part of this fight. He has his teleport coming up. He can get back in. He's going to push the tier 2 and help win the fight.
He should be able to threaten that tier 2 quite nicely. I don't think anyone can get over there and stop him, and that forces Obey's hand. They want to try and take the Primal with the 5v4 advantage, but they're really not even that favored in this fight. They haven't been able to lock anyone down, and still Scary swings away. This forces the teleport out from Ducky, but Ducky, this is a hard defense. Now that the Knights know Ducky's missing, they step up to the Primal Fury and grab it. This is about as clean as you like, but it does come down to the execution on actually confirming it. They drop the objective. Inbound finds the pull and the push, brings him back in, but Cubo Fred gets away from some of it, but not all. Zatman gets the kill in the weekend, though, on the backside to make them punish. The fight rages on.
And they're doing whatever they can to try and stay aggressive, but the health bars are not looking good for Obey. That's going to be Wowie. Wolfie forced the beads out of there.
Paul does get that kill on the inbound. They want Wowie. Scary D does get impaled back, but Bat out of hell does not care. He ends up finding Wowie as well for their third kill. They make it a 3-for-1. And Wolfie, where you running, buddy? That's right to Scary D's waiting. Clutches, grabs Wolfie quite nicely. The Primal Fury falls as well, and the Knights get a 4-for-1 plus the Fury.
And that's just, I mean, the Knights play heads up from minute 1, right? And it goes back to something that wasn't even a part of the fight. Scary D is where my eyes are at, because he gets a free, half of the tier 2 on right lane, still has his teleport available if they needed him in that fight over in the Knights. And he was able to walk over and engage and help clean up some of those kills. Didn't have to use the teleport at all, so he has it available to him now to, well, you guessed it, keep being aggressive and keep fighting and extend that player damage lead that he has. And then there's a couple of things that just go wrong for Obey, and my eyes unfortunately had to go to Weekend. There was a big opportunity for his ult to maybe land down on someone like Paul on Zap to cause some distress in the backline, and it threaded the needle right between everybody. It didn't connect, it didn't get the stun, and then he was just out of position, so it was easier for the Knights to capitalize and get that kill because Obey were just so split up. And that's the problem I'm having now. They're not playing together enough, because you need 3 or 4 people to try and deal with Scary D. You're going to need 2 to 3 people to deal with anybody else on the Knights. You got to play together, and you got to start looking at the objectives. The vision was really good a couple of minutes ago for him, but the wards have all but disappeared for Obey.
Wolfie takes quite a bit of damage, gets out of there. Zatman soloed the Pyromancer as well, while all the rest of the action was going down. So another neutral objective for the Knights. They'll now threaten the tier 2 tower that Scary set up for them earlier. And by threaten, I mean they will take it. Obey have no say in that matter. They're up 12,000 gold, 60,000 experience. The largest gap. I know they're not compared across roles, but just to give you an idea, Scary D is like level 19. Yep, and Inbound's level 10. To give an idea of just how far behind Inbound is at this point in terms of relative to the rest of the map. And Scary D continues the aggression. Wolfie can't even exist on the map. Scary still has the bat out of hell, but he's got the whole team with him. Meanwhile, his squad does the Fire Giant. Obey, at this point, are just outmatched.
Now, I'm just going to tell you, anyone watching this, right, put yourself in Scary D's shoes. It is very rare that your presence alone can command a team away from Fire Giant. Like, you on your own are enough distraction to let your team get a free Fire Giant. That does not happen in games, but that's how far ahead Scary D is right now. If I'm looking at problems Obey need to deal with, I may be rewinding time and banning out a Camazotz, because Scary D is just a monster. But this is the only issue, like, again, with Knights, sometimes Scary D doesn't have this performance, right? So maybe you don't get him being this absolute monster, but everyone on the team right now has been playing very clean, from Zatman to Paul to Cuvo. There's been a couple of, well, literally just a couple of kills Obey have been able to pick up where they were maybe slightly out of position and they finally got their ults to hit the right way. But if you get something like Scary D, 3-level lead over the Amaterasu, and like you had said, right now 8 levels, it just goes down a little bit since he's capped at 20 now, over the support, just having that wide of a berth from Obey. He is a mess, and there's not much else you can do with it. J. Jonah Jameson wants, pictures to run in the newspaper to make sure that Scary D's terrible, because, like, there's just nothing you can do to control him outside of hope he makes a mistake at this point.
Yeah, he is absolutely beyond restraint at this point, right? You're not going to be able to bring him back in. And now Obey might get collapsed on. Ducky was the one that was left without a seat in this awful game of musical chairs. Ducky now being locked down, goes to the dabbling offensive, but the cage gets dropped. They put a ring on it, and Ducky can't make it out of there. And you know, it's so funny that you bring up Scary D and his impact, because I say that it was Neil that stepped up big for them at Worlds, but if you ask anyone from the SK roster, whenever I talked to them, they all said that it was Belair. They all said it was Scary D that they really thought stepped up and played out of his mind for them in that big run for them to get their win towards Worlds. So I think what that really means is that you don't win Worlds unless everybody steps up and has a really strong performance. But it does go to show, right, that they really thought it was that Scary D can have these kind of games, and that he did as part of their Worlds run.
And it's that thread, right? How do you go from a team like last year who spent pretty much the entire year at the bottom of the standings to a world championship? And like in a weekend, maybe all 5 of you have a good week, but how do you make it consistent? That's what they're trying to do. Not make it lightning in a bottle. They want to go in.
They want to have it be more consistent, Gormizer. You're right. They get a lot of ultimates out from Obey there from this aggression. Thundercrash forces the bat out of hell from Scary, but he just repositions the Fear No Evil, zones everyone out. Meanwhile, the squad comes back to the right side. Phoenix below half HP. Dazzling Offensive is good, should find, but doesn't actually get any kind of stun. So the Knights just back up. They regroup, ready to push again.
And that Phoenix is really low, though, Finch. And they still have like a minute of Fire Giant. Scary D's going to be able to teleport right back in. So you get the best of both worlds. Now he's full health and able to get back in there. You want to look for this aggression, but it's so difficult to break this siege, especially because you have to deal with stuns coming out from Weekend. Still has his ult, can still go in the backline. Paul and Zatman might still be in danger.
Neil Mogg gets a couple members in the cage, and Scary D gets the kill. Inbound is the one that falls first. Ducky taking too much damage. Up onto the horse goes Zatman, and Ducky goes down. It's a 5v3 in their favor. Weekend finds one with the stun, but can't do anything after it. He gets caught in the blizzard from Paul, as it ends up being too much. Make it a double kill. It's just Wolfie left, and there's no way for him to defend up against the entirety of the Pittsburgh Knights. They're farming in the fountain. They want the D aside as they shut down Obey for game 1.
Yeah, that was, I want to say less of a win, more of a statement from the Knights, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain point where you're like, okay, cool, we win. Sanguine won, right? That was, no, we are here to play. This was something different from the Knights. I mean, from the first minute, you could tell they wanted to be aggressive. The drafts told us that. But they took those small little advantages they won across the map and just dialed it up to 11 throughout that game. I mean, when was there a single point that they were falling behind? Like, the closest I think I saw that game was maybe 500 gold after that first blood bounty. Otherwise, it was thousands and thousands in favor of the Knights. They just read the map, they played the objectives incredibly well, and the team fights all went their way.
They played cleanly. I think you could tell that this team was unhappy with the way that week 1 went. They came out and gave us a clean performance here, but that's only game 1. Obey can obviously still bounce back in game 2 and potentially beyond. But let's get it back over to the desk. We'll have Dolson break it down.
The week 1 to week 2 bounce back for the Knights is brutal if you're on the receiving end, and that's Obey this time around. Clean, concise from start to finish. I don't think the Knights stepped off the gas pedal that entire game. Mifflin's still with me to break this one down. Good luck breaking it down, though, Mifflin, because I think that is about as clean a game of Smite as you can maybe get. And the Knights did not look like they would be denied. 1 death on Fred, 1 death on Neil, and that's it.
Yeah, this is the point where I would normally go into the game, say what Obey would need to work on in order to shift the focus into game 2 and really break down where the leads happened.
Right.
But I don't think I could say anything that the viewers in chat didn't already see. It was so cut and dry. PK came out of the woodwork, swinging hard, haymakers left and right. And every single blow landed. They said they wanted to play their own game, and they absolutely did. I mean, that was clinical. It was clean. I want to say what needs to change. But truthfully, a lot needs to change. The only thing Obey can do going forward is forget that match even happened and just try and bring it back this game in a completely different style.
Well, a game like that, maybe it's honestly easier to kind of break it down pick ban style. Like, you pick a Kamazotz because he can do this. You pick a Hoonbats because he can do Y. You pick an Odin because he can do Z. Literally every reason you would pick one of the gods for the Knights is what they ended up doing this game. None maybe more so than Scary D on this Kamazotz. Top damage in the game. And you want to talk about an offensive onslaught. Ducky in his interview figured he would find it, but I'm not sure him or the rest of Obey expected what we saw from Scary D.
Yeah, I said in that pregame that it was hard for me to reel Scary D back in, right? To reel in Belair, to make him stop playing as aggressively as he had been. But it seems like he doesn't need to be stopped. He can do whatever he wants, and it's gonna work out. There are two avenues of thought for Soul Laners, right? You can continue to put pressure in your lane and bring people to you, or you can rotate out with a lead and bring yourself to the rest of the game. Scary D did both. He played between tier 1 and tier 2 tower. He played behind the tier 2 tower. He's on their Phoenix. People came over to him. He either killed them or got out alive. Or if he was bored of that, he'd rotate out and kill Obey somewhere else on the map. It didn't really matter to Scary D what was happening. And that's what Camazotz can bring. That unbridled aggression, that raw survivability, that sustain. All of that is something that Camazotz has in spades. So I imagine we do see Obey ban it out, and it wouldn't be the wrong answer. It's only right. You can't let Scary D do that again.
Yeah, I think at this point, if you're Obey, I mean, again, I still think there are some building blocks there that maybe are positives to kind of build on. But if you look towards picks and bans here for Game 2, I mean, I think either you need to pick the premier counter-aggressive composition that you can, or take away all of the aggressive picks that the Knights are going to find. It is still going to be a hell first band out here. I would be very surprised, though, if Obey don't ban out the Camazotz and then also don't pick him first overall. But I think the Knights, sensing that coming, are going to take the Camazotz away. So at least for Scary D, a different look in that solo lane.
Yeah, he's going to play something along the same lines, I imagine. Just that aggressive playstyle is something that we've come to know and love about Scary D. I like Obey's thought process here. They're going to ban out the Thor, ban out the Hell. Paul's so comfortable on that God. These are standard picks. But it's really not going to come down to P's and B's. I don't want Obey to change their playstyle. I think they have that clear, defined characteristic that it is aggression. I think you just have to completely all in on it and pray that you do win the early game. You have to win the early game because it's all you guys have as a cohesive unit. It's your true identity as a squad, and I don't think you can give it up now.
I agree. I think, and that's sort of what I mean when I say that Obey has some of those building blocks, and if they can kind of come together and make a sculpture of some sort, maybe it's on the back of some of that aggression that this team has. 6 bans in here for both sides. Anything jump out at you that's maybe made it through these first 6 bans that one of these two teams should be leaping towards?
Obey could lean in towards this Persephone. Oh, we love to see that. The Persephone is a highly aggressive pick in that mid lane, able to poke people out from far away, as well as lock them down. So if we see some support rotations, maybe we even see a Hercules picked up again by Bobby, that could be good. I imagine we see PK look at the Odin or something like along those lines, some more aggressive picks over there as well. I mean, it's... Oh, I write the script, guys. It really is. It's all me.
Let's go, Myth. Let's go. Yeah, Persephone right into the Odin. Works every time. Odin's still on that 100% win rate. I think worth noting that Persephone has been banned out in 100% of the SPL games so far. This will be the first time we have been allowed to see her in this game as Obey pick her up first overall. So what kind of a difference do you hope to see out of Persephone? Obviously a high skill ceiling. I mean, you have to be so mechanically strong to play a god like Persephone, but because she brings so much to the table and can turn a lot of these games around.
I would like to see Wolfie play a little bit further back than we saw last game. And he could do that with Persephone without sacrificing damage, because Persephone is truly one of the best snipers in all of Smite. Her damage output is so high from so far away, as well as the self-sustain. If he does get picked or poked out, rather, he should be able to heal it up. He should be able to lock down enemies from anywhere on the map. I love the Persephone pickup. She really, truly doesn't have a weak phase in the game either. The second she hits level 5, she's online, and that's what Obey needs, because they are looking for that constant aggression in their 3v3 in mid.
I agree, and I think a big boon to their aggressive cause is King Arthur making his way through as well, banned out by the Knights in Game 1, but now Ducky's going to get his chance to play the aggressive solo lane god here in Game number 2. I think Hebo, worth mentioning here, Mifflin, we've seen him trickled into a few of these games here and there. What are your hopes and aspirations for this Hebo here for the Knights?
Well, I'm hoping that it's Paul piloting that Hebo, but both gods picked up, Uller and Hebo, are Paul's signature gods. So those could flex either way. We could see Hebo in the long lane with Zapman. We could see Uller in mid. We could see it reversed either way. So I do like this pick because it's going to keep Obey on their toes. But either way, both of them are incredibly aggressive. I imagine we're going to see a lot of jumping in from the Uller. Hebo's going to be able to play up the second he hits level 5, especially considering now that there's lifesteal on Shoes of the Magi. Hebo's going to get a slight buff there because he doesn't really benefit from CDR quite as much as the other mages, and is going to give him that level of sustain that he didn't have a couple weeks ago.
And I look at kind of the lockdown and the setup that the Knights already have throughout their first few picks. I mean, you talk about Odin stun, Ur stun, Hebo knock up, Amaterasu with her ultimate grab some crowd control as well. The Knights, I think, have drafted themselves a good composition here to find some lockdown and really start to transform some of these fights to be advantageous for themselves. Obey, on the other hand, they are going to swing towards that Kuzenbo, and a god that we saw, I mean, I would say mitigated success from this morning for Space Station Gaming, picked up twice by Raffer, no wins, but in those games, I would say Kuzenbo didn't look horrible.
I do like the Kuzenbo pickup simply because of how much it meshes with Bobby's playstyle. If he wants to move up and get aggressive, he's going to be able to reflect some of that damage back, and we do see a lot of aggression landing onto inbound. So if you're going to get hit, you might as well get a little bit rewarded for it, and that's something that Kuzenbo can bring. As well with the CC immunity and mobility that Kuzenbo brings, maybe if he does get picked out like he has been, he's going to be able to play around it a little bit better. Pele picked up from PK. That's a potent roster, man. Pittsburgh Knights, they found something good here.
And I know we like the Knights roster, but if you look over towards Obey, are you excited about the 5 they've brought here into Game 2?
I do. I think they've got a lot that they can work with. I mean, if you leave Huawei alone on her, he should be able to fight into the Uller or the Hebo, whichever one, insofar as he doesn't fall too far behind. So I think Obey definitely has a foot to stand on.
Well, it's time for Obey to try to even this one up, and it's also time for the Knights to find their first win here in Season 7 of the SPL, and that means it's time for Game 2.
All right, well, let's see if the Knights can close this one out, or if Obey will be the ones that shut them down. Sounds like we're leaning towards the Knights there, at least from what Mifflin was telling us from the analyst desk. What are you thinking, Gormizer? The Knights have come in well-equipped. Paul on Habwa. I think this is about as signature Paul as you can get. It's what he dominated the minor league with and then came up to the SPL and still played at a high level. This is scary to me, even with Persephone, if I'm on the side of Obey.
I think it's going to be the difference of like calm, collected control that like Persephone can bring versus just hectic, I'm going to kill you real hard that Hebo brings, right? And it is that thing that Paul has. I think yesterday we got to see a little bit of what Lasber could do on this Pele. I'm excited to see what it can do in Huvo's hands. Well, Neil hasn't skipped a beat from last game. They're already pushed up against the purple bomb.
They're looking to try and invade, and this is really going to work. Zapman can start working on clearing this lane. Meanwhile, Neilma can keep everyone zoned out. This is almost the same. That's a really good stun Neil hit there, too. But this is almost the same as what the supports were doing before anyway. He kind of keeps Wowie out, doesn't let him do purple or the wave. It benefits Zapman, and now they can rotate back over to purple or even try and start this fight onto Inbound, who has been stunned, takes the bladed arrow, is now slowed by this horrific emblem, has to try and use the Alpha Harpy, but now he's body blocked in. I don't think there's a way that he can get out. He's been locked down. Neilma finds the first blood.
All right, Finch, I'm going to ask you. All right, so you got a stun from Odin, then you get a stun from Uller, and then for the second time now, Neil has gone for this horrific emblem to give you a slow. You get stunned twice, then slowed so you can't run away. If you're inbound, like, I think I'm feeling pretty upset. I don't know about him. It's the opposite of how he wants to play, right? He wants to go fast, and the way Knights have drafted stops him from getting aggressive.
Yeah, I think Inbound has to show me the ability to say no to at least one fight at some point, man. He cannot take all of them or he'll just end up dying like we're seeing happening from him. This is good, though. Inbound shows up towards this fight around the red buff and does help them establish some pressure. It's just not enough to keep the red buff up, and the Knights just steal that one away, and Paul can go back and grab his own red buff now, too. So they haven't skipped a beat from last game. You said about Neil, but it's the whole squad. The Knights continuing their aggression.
And it's so dangerous, I would think, at least, in this kind of area, because, like, look at Paul's health. He's incredibly low, no mana. Habwa can knock a ton backing. But he's not necessarily known for the 100-0 turnaround at level 3, right? That's a level 20 when he's able to kind of hover around this area. So they have to be a little careful with that aggression. I think unbridled aggression that they had last time is going to get slowed down. Scary D still has some sustain, but it's not Camazot's level sustain. You still have a lot of damage and potential from this Pele, but maybe not quite as much as you'll have coming out of like a Fear No Evil from a Hunbat. So I expect we'll see the Knights maybe dial back a little bit this time, save for this duo lane, which doesn't seem to understand that the rest of the team is going to slow down. but you're not going to see them give up much of a lead because they're still controlling the way Obey play. Obey haven't gotten to play their game just yet because of the way that Knights have been drafting. And that's, I think, going to be the biggest difference. When they can start making the decisions and choosing when to engage instead of being forced to engage, we will start to see Obey shine. But as of right now, the Knights are just not going to let them.
No, they haven't really given Obey much room to breathe at all. And I think the big question for this set is going to be, is this Persephone enough value to make up for giving this Odin back over to Neil? And that's not quite fair, because if you don't take the Persephone, if you take the Odin, you give that over to Paul, and that's scary in its own right too. But that's how those two top picks end up lining up, right? So you kind of have to look at it that way. And I just don't know if Wolfie's going to be able to show us enough value in time before Neil Ma has already dominated the left side of the map. Now they've completed yet another red buff invade and forced Wolfie away from more farm.
And just as much as you can get any single pick,
oh, no.
especially something in the solo lane if you can get a solo kill.
Very, very close. Ducky does manage to reposition on the tail lane, doesn't get caught by that dazzling offensive, but things now starting to already feel bleak if you're on the side of Obey Alliance. I mean, Inbound and WoW haven't gotten to leave their tier 1 tower. We have not gotten to see Wolfie get a red buff yet this game as the Knights continue to strip that away. Scary D has reestablished pressure over in solo. And then these two junglers, there has been more impact from Kivo. He's been a part of the fights in mid, but again, they both haven't been supremely needed up until now.
And that's, I would argue, maybe the glorious thing, because both of their playstyle seems to be, especially this early on, get your ult, then see what you can do. Kivo actually looking to get caught out right here. Might end up getting it away, using the ult to run off.
Uses the Volcanic Lightning to reposition. Weekend tries to stay close, but they don't get this kill on the Kivo. Fred, that's tough, man, because Kivo is so far out of position there. You have that Persephone ult to try and help lock him down as well, but they couldn't get the Grasp of Death to connect. They couldn't stay close enough there, Gore, and somehow Kivo wiggles his way out of there.
And it's one of those moments, if Weekend is able to get a little bit of farm before that engagement, he's level 5 and he has his ult to be able to throw out, right? Just something else to help lock him down. You unfortunately have Inbound right now at level 3, so it's not doing a lot, whereas Neil is level 5 chasing Weekend down at his speed buff right now. They're going for ganks on solo lane. The Knights don't care.
Yeah, Ducky being dove under the tier 1. They didn't quite have the damage to get him there, but it was close. I'm sure he wasn't feeling comfortable as that was well played. And now Weekend could be in some trouble. He's trying to come in with speed, but Neil Ma's there. A good cage catches him, and Neil Ma gets the dunk. This is what I'm talking about, man. This is the play, that level of play that got them to that World Championship, and it's what Neil Ma's bringing into Season 7. I just love watching this guy play Smite, man.
And this is, Finch, this is the answer to the question I heard a lot throughout the offseason, which was, did the Knights just have a good weekend? Like, are they going to end up getting picked up and going forward in Season 7 and not being able to play at the same level that they did for that one World Championship run, which I guess you can also include the qualifiers and all that time like leading up to it.
Sure.
But, I mean, you look at the regular season, they were never there. Now they are absolutely showcasing what they have. Last week, I think we got to see that Radiance is very solid. Knights are proving they are not out of the running.
No, I think what we're really starting to see is that everyone has come to play at the SPL this year. I mean, Sang was one of those teams that I thought coming in, okay, they're going to be one of the teams on the bottom, and you don't have to worry about too much about the squad, but they've proven me wrong in that regard. Everybody is stepping up right now. And it just has me excited to watch these teams play because we're always going to be seeing the best of the best push each other to the limit. But so far here, Gore, Obey might be at theirs, man. This has been really tough going for them. That's a good pillar. Wowie buys himself some time, gets aggressive, knows that Inbound's on the way, but that might have been the wrong call. Does impale Newmont against the wall. In comes the Kappa, and that's a big play from Wowie, trusting Inbound to come in, and Obey are not ready to sit down yet.
It's a glorious turnaround. I think Wowie reading the map really well, and Neoma, I was kind of wondering, as I watched it, I was just like, man, what's Inbound going to be able to do here? I think he maybe had something similar in his mind where it's just like, he was level 4 before that kill. Is he really going to be able to do too much to allow Wowie to get the return kill? And if the answer is yes, it makes a big difference. It helps get a little bit less gap there between Wowie and Zapman. So now Zapman's maybe a little more pressured out by this Onher, who I think is going to be hitting, again, a good boxing area right now as he starts to finish up some items. But you're still looking at the control. That was a 4-man full rotation over to the duo lane. 2 of them were only necessary. You only needed the duo lane themselves, but you had Weekend, you had Wolfie both in the jungle ready to be able to jump in there. And so it's those moments like, okay, when are you going to be able to commit 4 people like that? Like, and is it worth it for the support that you're getting outside of the Knights?
Look at how they're converging on this red buff, though. This is so well timed from the Knights for yet another one of these buff invades. But Obey have brought 4 members to the party to try and defend, but they can't step in. Look, they're giving it up again. And this is tough now because I think Obey did the right thing. They had members there. They were a bit late. The Knights had the positioning that kind of baited them in a little bit. And now there's more action. Paul is locked inside this camp and uses the beads and the crushing wave, and inbound gets flattened. Grasp of Death hits Casper as Paul finds the double kill to shut them down. They want another one. Cubo Fred goes forward to gobble up Wolfie, and the Knights starting to run over Obey.
Finch, do you ever see an amount of damage happen in just kind of one bout of a fight, and it still kind of like, it just blows you away? Because I know what Paul is capable of, right? Like, I know the damage numbers. I see the items with Bancroft's Talon and the boots. He's got enough lifesteal and power to melt anybody. And it still blows my mind how fast he was able to just melt people there. The way they're playing right now from the Knights isn't just pure, like, aggression, right? It's just so calculated in where they're finding their engagements. I say this, of course, as Neil is in the jungle surrounded by 4, but ignoring that one aspect, so much of what they've done has been calculated.
Well, Neomaw's running for his life here at this point, and Wolfie is able to find some damage to punish Neomaw on the back end. And this is what Obey are going to have to do a lot more of if they want to turn this set around, right? Is they've got to find some kind of way to make sure they're punishing Neil when he oversteps their Gormizer, or whomever it is that ends up going too far forward. They can't just let the Knights continue to take their jungle away from them for free. Cuba, Fred, and Scary have to start falling back and right. Ducky does enough to deter them, and they can at least defend their jungle a little bit.
Realistically, it is, like you said, Obey punishing Knights anytime they take something that aggressive, right? But you also have to look at the Knights, like, if I'm Neil, just slow it down just a little bit. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, if you hit the brakes just slightly, you keep aggressive, but you're not diving their speed buff aggressive all the time, then you're still going to be able to find these fights, and it takes away the opportunities for Obey to find picks like that. I mean, even right here, Zapman reading the map really well, playing in just the distance that he can jump back to his tower line if he needs to, but knowing that he could turn the fight around if he gets a gank, which Neil is rotating over for. It's just those moments of recognizing and playing the play state of the game so well that the Knights were able to get such a massive lead last time, and so far cultivated themselves a 4,000 gold lead this time around, and that's about the same amount of gold where we saw them start to pressure that Gold Fury.
Yeah, it looks like inbound being around was enough for them to give up on the Gold Fury entirely. I'm very surprised. I mean, they're up so much at this point. Maybe they don't want to risk a potential throw or giving the game back to Obey by letting that Gold Fury be stripped away there. Scary D catches up and does put some good damage into Weekend, but it's not enough to completely lock him down either, so they continue to move around the jungle, looking to strip some farms. Speed buff is about to start. Maybe they've got the timer on this. This is risky, though. A lot of people in blue, a lot of Order team members here to try and defend. It looks like it was stripped away. Cubo Fred uses Volcanic Lightning, doesn't find anyone, gets locked into the grasp of death, but in comes Neomaw. It's a 2-man stunt from Scary D as well as they lock down Wicked. Scary makes it 1-for-1. Already on the way out is Neomaw, but Scary D is it. He wants the double, shuts down Wolfie as well.
Man, it felt like it was going to be an overcommit, and it still kind of feels like an overcommit. But it looks like the Knights are going to be able to walk away from this one. Not unscathed, they lose Cuvo, but they're doing something that's very important. And it's realistically, you look at the level gap between the junglers, and it is 2 levels right now in favor of Cuvo. They are stripping away the speed buff. They're making Weekend not get farm and not be impactful in these fights.
It's a good blink from inbound, does get the beads out, but it ends up costing his life for it in that last trade. The action rate is on as the Habois is able to find some good damage underneath the tier 1. They're continuing to look for their aggression, and they want this fight to keep happening. The Susano is there as well, but he ends up getting blown up. Paul shuts down Weekend quite nicely, and the Knights continue to answer whatever aggression, and these Grasp of Death just really have not been there from Wolfie. He's got to make sure these are connecting as the damage from Zapman too much. Paul gets the kill, but that was all hail of arrows, bladed arrow to shut him down.
And you know, I'm happy we have that replay, mainly because whatever length that was, that is how fast it took Weekend to respawn, run in, and die again. Because he was dead when we went into it, and dead when we got back to it. It's just those moments, right? When you're the jungler, that's where I would argue more of the impact should be felt, right? Your ganks are going to either enable your team to get kills or enable you to get kills. Paul is 5-0 right now, and while some of it is Paul, it's because Neil and Cuvo are helping him set up these kills and find out picks throughout the map. And unfortunately, I mean, you're 1-3 if you're Wolfie, you're 1-4 if you're Weekend. Both of them 2 or 3 levels behind right now. It's just, you have to start taking better fights. It's very similar to the game state last game. You've got to figure out where you want to take these objectives and where you want to try and pressure out the Knights, because a 1v4 as the support, it just ain't it.
No, and I mean, he is in his own jungle. I'll give him some credit there, but at this point in the game, they're so tremendously far behind Gormizer, nearly 7,000 gold, that, you know, you don't own the same real estate that you used to. It looks like Obey are going to trade the Pyromancer for the Gold Fury here, which is about the best they can hope for. So this is good to get some farm back off the map and try and keep this game close. If nothing else, at least the Knights can't go get that Pyromancer now. But still, it's tough, man. It really does feel like there's just not a lot of space for Obey to operate.
The way I like to look at it is when you load into a Conquest game, there's a horizontal line right across the middle of the map. And that's your line of scrimmage, right? If you walk past it, you're on their side. If you don't walk past it, you're on your side. The Knights have effectively moved that to the Tier 2 tower line right now, and maybe even a little bit further, because they don't seem to care too much about the Tier 2s, and that's where things come through. Wherever the line of scrimmage is for the Knights is where Obey can no longer walk. They can't roam in their own jungle and feel safe anymore. And that's where it becomes like, is it even your jungle at this point? Like, it's the Knights' jungle. They just let you live in it occasionally when they decide to not be aggressive, or they have to go get some of the buffs on the other side that technically is theirs. And that's where my eyes are going to be, right? Is just how far the Knights can push this line of scrimmage, because right now, it's at the red line.
No, you're right, man. I don't know where Obey could go and feel safe at this point. They finally defend this red buff. That might be the first one of the game up until this point, but they push the Knights back out of their jungle. The Knights just got a Tier 2, though, and all this extra farm. They might just want to back up so they can go spend some of this gold. I like this, though. They know that a lot of members have backed. Maybe they can catch Zapman by himself. Ducky grabs him. Zapman uses the beads, makes it over the wall. Inbound does have Blink. He finds his way over the wall. There's so many members of Obey here. They're definitely going to get this kill on the Zapman. It's just a question of how long. It doesn't take too long, and they shut him down.
And Neil, it's hard to tell. Is he trying to bait for Paul to come over? It looks like they still want to fight, and they're going to be going back in.
They do. Paul is waiting in the wings as well, so this fight is nicely favored. Desert Fury, well timed. Volcanic Lightning, though, nearly out DPSs it, but Wowie finds another kill. But Neil Ma now here. Paul flattens 2 with the double kill, and they turn the fight back around. It ends up being a 2 for 3 in favor of the Knights.
You know, sometimes all you need is that ult if you're Hebo, and that's enough to get it done. I think Cuvo, like, there's one moment, if a knockup doesn't come up from Wowie, then maybe you even trade less for those kills. But Obey are picking up a little bit more often than they did the last game, right? A couple more kills here or there.
Yeah.
The problem is they're all going the same way. I mean, if you've watched that man's stream, he's used to seeing 4 people underneath him whenever he's at the Tier 1 tower, especially if he has any sort of lead. It's just the way it goes for him. So that's not something that he's going to even be that tilted about. You get this kill, maybe you close up some of the gap between Wowie and Zapman, but Wolfie's still 4 levels behind. Weaken's still 3 levels behind. I think the kills, even though it's warranted to try and deal with Zapman, maybe he's the only one you can deal with because the rest are so far ahead. In fact, they're looking to dance around the Fire Giant right now.
They are, and I think they could do this. I mean, just look at the map. They've got the information, too, with all these wards as well. There's no one on Obey who's close enough to contest, and even if they were close enough, I don't think they could effectively contest. So this Fire Giant does belong to the Knights at this point. And Cord, we've been talking about how, well, the Grasp of Death comes out. It's not going to be enough to seal it, though. The Knights grab it. We've been talking about how Ducky was kind of the shining light, the one bright spot for Obey, but that's not been the case this set. Scary D has effectively taken him out of contention this set.
Yeah, it unfortunately goes back to what he said in the interview, right? Like, we kind of expected, honestly, even as King Arthur, I expect him to be bullying throughout this lane, but he loses his tower first, hasn't gotten the retaliation in the tower. He's been a part of 3 of the 5 kills, which is big, but when Scary D is 3-0, and of course we saw what he was able to do last game, you have to wonder if the impact is really coming down from there. Granted, he's doing the best on Obey, so maybe there's some warrant to that. Maybe you can throw Wowie in there, just 2-1-1, so maybe in that conversation, but like, it's something to be said that maybe he's not necessarily falling behind as much as it is that you can see the impact of a solo laner. It's not going to be enough to change the game state all the time, right? I think a good performance right now from Ducky could start to help win the game, but there's not much he can do on his own. He needs a little bit of help to get there.
Yeah, and Doug's starting to highlight that Scary D is doing this sort of popularized Amaterasu attack speed build. I think we saw this more towards the second phase last year for these Amaterasus. They would get the Berserker Shield, they would get the Ninja Tabai and lean into it. But this is really leaning into it with that Frostbound Hammer as well as the Ickvile from Scary D. He's doing a lot of his work with those basic attacks, and it synergizes well with his passive. He wants to get those multiple autos up on the same target so they're taking more damage.
Well, I'm just going to say, try to outrun him with the Frostbound Hammer and his own little movement speed buff, right? He has a sustain, and now, like you said, he's getting out those autos faster. Like, you're just going to have Prot Shred, and they're going to go in with it.
They're trying to fight around this grasp of death. The cage, though, slows down a lot of this fight. This is good, though, from Inbound. He pushes Neomon underneath the Phoenix, and they burn him down quite quickly. This might be the defense Obey needed to try and hold on in this game. There's a lot earlier than I normally say this, but the game simplifies around these Phoenix defenses, and maybe Obey around Persephone, who's very strong in those defenses, can stall out the Knights for a bit.
It's very weird because we're not even 19 minutes in yet. I assumed we were at 28 minutes. I don't know where the time in my life went that we were 10 minutes ahead, but it's just you don't see teams rushing down a Phoenix pre-20 minutes. And I think that helps Obey out. Again, the Knights, the calls that are going to end up losing them the game are going to be a little bit on Obey. Where do they contest some objectives? Where do they win these fights? And how exactly do they make those calls? Much like Inbound pushing Nielma there to save that Phoenix. But it's also going to be, how aggressive do the Knights get, right? Are you diving a left Phoenix before you really have any control over in the left lane? Like, you have to make these decisions, and you have to temper them out just enough that while you can keep your aggression, keep your lead, you don't end up, throwing something away that you have, right? 13,000 gold, 12,000 gold as it is right now. It's enough to coast on. You could lose a couple fights even and still be ahead technically, but you have to be very careful because if any of these objectives or any of these Phoenix sieges don't go your way, that opens the door for Obey to just barrage their way back in. 1:30 until the Fire Giant is up, that would open up an objective for them to potentially try and take some of those towers and even out the game state.
They're absolutely going to take the tier 2 tower in the short lane. That one falls very quickly. And to be fair, I mean, the Knights were over-committing a bit to that left side Phoenix, and they only lose Neil. They're still in great position to contest here. Inbound comes to the back. Grasp of Death makes it all the way to the back for Zapman and forces out his Purification Beads. That's good work from Wolfie. But the left side Phoenix is a sitting duck. There's no one there to defend that one, Gormizer, and the Knights grab it for free.
And being able to split up like this, I mean, normally you have a 4-1 split and maybe you get a Phoenix, right? A 3-2 split, getting a Phoenix, and looking like you could potentially win a fight, you pull out an ult from Weekend, you can still go in here.
Weekend finds the two-man knockup. That sets up for a nice kill there that Ducky gets. Wowie was pretty instrumental in it, but Paul now starting to find his stride with 9 in a row. Shuts down 2 with the double kill, but Ducky finds a double kill of his own. He shuts down Neil Ma, but Scary D still full HP and looking to work. Looking to see if we can find Ducky, and the King Arthur finds a nice heal so he can keep standing, but Cubo Fred's gotten to Wolfie. There was no entourage there to back him up, and Cubo wants to see if he can find Ducky as well. Wolfie inside that passive does get 1 kill. A nice stun from Ducky nearly shuts down Cubo, so maybe not the cleanest. Obey finds some nice return kills, but they do get the left side Phoenix.
That was so close to potentially being a kill onto Ducky, and it could have turned into something more, but well played by Obey. It felt like some of those ults in my eyes started too early in the fight, but they ended up being essentially perfectly timed in order to deal with Zapman and deal with Neil. You can see both of them respawning at the exact same time, burning down that duo lane that got such a massive lead and has such massive control in terms of CC early, means it's easier for you to kind of free throw throughout the fight, right? You don't have to worry about, man, is Neil going to stun me with the Gungnir's Might? Is Zapman going to throw an axe and hit me in the back line? Once they're gone, there's not as much for Cuvo or for Paul to maybe jump in on. Scary D tried to be that initiation, and he tried really hard and did really well with it. Unfortunately, still fighting under that right-hand Phoenix. There's just too much incoming damage for them to all survive throughout all that one.
Obey do well, I think, just to keep the game from ending there, though. And every bit of time they bought, I felt like, since about the 19-minute mark onward, has been borrowed time. So they're happy. I think that they're even still really in contestation here. This Fire Giant can't be contested by Obey. They're giving this one up for free. And I want to talk about how well Ducky played that last fight, Gore. I think that he really did play it about as well as you could ask for from that King Arthur to buy his team some time. He had some really clutch stuns and was spacing his abilities out well. They're going to need a lot more from everyone on Obey if they want to hold on to these defenses, but they've got a strong comp where maybe they can do it.
And it's such a weird thing to hone in on, but juking the right way, because it doesn't seem like there's a bad way to juke. If you're not getting hit, that's always going to be solid. But he turned back into the Phoenix when he was low instead of trying to run to the base. And it's just the gap between Phoenix and base, Cuvo Fred or Scary D, whoever can chase you down and kill you before you get to the fountain. But if they go back under the Phoenix, they're going to have to take damage there. And it's just those moments where you kite them appropriately so they take the maximum amount of damage, use what is around you as a sixth man in the team fight to deal that damage. Your Phoenixes are going to help you. In a split like this, they're looking, that's an ambush.
Inbound does catch Zapman. The Desert Fury doesn't get much, but Neil Ma locked down, but that has to be the Mantle of Discord proc that stays in there, and it absolutely was. That's a big stun, and so Cubo Fred can come in with the Volcanic Lightning. The knockup's there to follow up as well, but Ducky manages to shut him down. Not before Paul answers back, though, with a double kill. Gets Ducky as well with the Crushing Wave, and there's only Weekend and Inbound left to try and defend. The Pittsburgh Knights have 4 to burn down the mid-Phoenix.
And just being able to take that one, they can push into the room. You still have to deal with Weekend, but I don't know if the damage is going to be enough, especially with Paul. I mean, he's 11-4 right now, Finch.
Yeah, Weekend's starting to be in some trouble. He does manage to get back towards the fountain now, but with minions starting to pour in from mid and left with 4 members of the Knights, should be able to take this game. Obey don't have enough tools at their disposal to defend here, and the Knights, in dominant fashion, clean up Obey 2-0.
I want to look at someone other than Paul's slash line, but once I realize he's
really
11-4 at the end, it's just hard to take my eyes off of it. And it's just, again, the setup coming from the rest of the team. There were a lot of moments where you see Neil running around and zoning out, right? And he's just charging up that Gungnir's Might. He's got the stun ready in the event they need it. And it's just the stuns, the CC, the control they had, again, from minute 1 with their aggression and the aggressive play. They all have stepped up. They've answered the question everyone wanted to see out of them in the offseason. And giving Paul something as signature as his Hebo and letting it go 11-0, you can't ask for more in your second game of the year.
Yeah, I would say that game was never really much in question, either one of those games. Obey did show us, though, some signs of life at multiple moments. It just wasn't enough to overcome the Knights. They're going to have to regroup and get ready for their next match. But that's enough here from Finch and Gormizer. Let's instead get it back over to Dolson and Myth to break it down.
Thank you, Finch and Gorn. Great job on the call. That's a bounce back for the Knights here in week number 2, and a bounce back for Susano, honestly, a god that had seen limited play and seen now a couple of times today. And wouldn't you guess it, he's got a new skin out right now. Knight of Storms, Susano, jump into game, check it out. He's in the Storm Hero chest, so you can jump into Smite, check out the Storm Hero chest, and maybe pick up a new Susano skin to tote around in your games. Mifflin's still with me to round out our day here. Miff, I think it's probably best to focus on the good that we saw from the Knights first of all, because, you know, a rough week 1 for them, not the first week you want to have fresh off a world championship, but here you are in week 2, and they come back from a rough week 1 in the best way possible, I'd argue.
Yeah, you said to focus on the good, and there's plenty to focus on. I mean, can't take away from Paul's insane slash line at the end of that match, proving that, especially now with these lifesteal changes with the boots, Hebo can be a fantastic powerhouse, as well as Belair just completely controlling that solo lane. I mean, Ducky didn't really get much time to shine. However, the one shining hope for Obey finds himself a 3-in-1 slash line, gets the majority of the kill participation as well. A slight nod to Wowie. He found some very early kills in a sea of pain that Obey was experiencing. Yep. So there were definitely signs that these guys can hang with the big boys, but unfortunately as a unit, they did fall a little bit flat.
I agree, and I like you pointing that out, and I like Finch kind of bringing that up as well. You know, specifically in games like this where, you know, Obey just behind, really, from minute 1. I think it was 4 minutes in. We were kind of sitting together, taking notes, watching the game. You were like, all right, this one seems like it's for the Knights. And I think it's important and good to look at the good that came out of it. And Ducky and Wowie, I think, were 2 bright spots for Obey, maybe that they're able to build on in future weeks. But I mean, you look at the top to bottom for the Knights in that game, and I love starting with this guy, Paul. What do you end 11-0 and something on this Hebo? You loved it in picks and bans. You said this is consummate Paul. I mean, this is the god that kind of embodies a lot of what he wants to do, and apparently for good reason.
Yeah, for those of us who in the chat who don't know Paul's storied history, he started out as a duel player, and my man was playing duel constantly. And he played Hebo, he played Hell, and occasionally he'd play Uller. And in Conquest, he proved that all that time he spent practicing in duel is going to translate, and it certainly has. I mean, look at all of these plays: multi-man knockups, multi-man ultimates. Every single ability that he lands is finding above and beyond what you'd expect. And traditionally, when you think about Hebo, that is a single target damage god, but now when he's playing it, he's a one-man artillery strike.
And you know what I think just sucks doubly there for Obey is that it seemed like there were maybe 1, 2, 3 kind of engagements that game where Obey were just going to come out with a net win. You know, one more kill than the Knights, one more small man advantage. And it seemed like it was Paul every single time who would roll in, crash the wave over everyone, turn around a big fight. It just seemed like in the moments where it looked like Obey were going to finally win a fight, it was Paul who was putting a damper on that. And maybe it's just because the fight always turned when Paul made his way in there. I mean, it's hard to really put a cap, I think, on the Knights and know where their potential is. Do you think this is a Knights that's starting to return to some of that form that we saw during that World Championship run from the guys on this roster?
Yeah, in week 1, I think we saw some real growing pains trying to adapt to this new jungler in QVO Fred, but this week he performed absolutely admirably. PK showed that if they're playing their own game, they're playing their own style, that they are going to be completely dominant, and they did it perfectly this week. There are definitely signs that this is a roster that you need to keep your eyes on. Similar to Radiant, similar to SSG,
Agreed.
Similar to Sanguine. Never thought I'd be saying that, but it seems like these are going to be the top contenders.
That's right. Here we are. Pittsburgh Knights back in the winning column, and that means we've got them back into the interview seat. Let's head to a post-game interview and see how they're feeling.
Thanks, Dolson. I'm here with Cuvo Fred, jungler for the Knights, jungler extraordinaire, I'm happy to say. Well, Cuvo, talk to me about this set, man, because I really think that you had some great performances from some individual players, especially Scary D in Game 1. What does it mean for the team when he's able to have a monster performance like that on the Camelzots?
Yo, what's up? Scary D really popped off the first game today, and damn, he didn't let go of that W key, and he just bring it home. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk to you a little bit about how the team is meshing too, because you're kind of the new addition to a team that's already been playing together for a while. So what's it been like for you in particular, trying to find your spot in this team, trying to figure out, how much shot calling you need to do or that kind of thing? What's it been like meshing with them?
It's been different because I'm so used to like playing with the Tricks tank and we would do our thing together, But this time around, I'm coming in as a new guy and like meshing with gang and solo, duo, and like how they want to play the game and how they want to call. So it's definitely new and it's super exciting. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Well, was there any extra urgency on this game, considering that you all lost your opener back in week 1? For what it's worth, I think you all have played really well in every game that you've been in so far, but I don't know how you all feel about it. Was there any extra pressure here to win this one?
I feel like the first game against Radiance, the first set, we showed a lot of potential. We lost the first game in the base race, which was super close, and then the second game, we just kind of messed up getting picked and stuff. But we definitely still wanted to go hard today and like show that we can do our thing.
We can see Scary, the man for game number 1 back there. Talk to me about Neil Ma as well, then, if you could, a bit, Cubo, because in both games, I felt like his pressure was really critical to getting you guys off to a really good start. Well, what's he like in his impact for your team as well?
Neil is he's really good with pressure. Like he knows what he want to do and like he sees opportunities and he takes it. And he just did that today. He's so weekend with tier 1 boots and no mana at his own speed. So he just went down there and showed them who's the boss.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, Cubo. Are there any other shout-outs or anything that you want to do for us before I let you go, maybe to the org or anything like that?
Shout out to our org for picking us up and sorting us out. And also shout out to my teammates for being great.
Well, it sounds like things are going well over there in the Knights camp. Appreciate you again, Cubo. Looking forward to the rest of your matches. I'll get it back over to Dolson and Mifflin so they can close things out.
All right, take care.
Thank you, Finch and Cubo. And I love watching the team in the back watching the interview happen right behind them. Obviously, great attitudes, high hopes for the future there. in the Knights organization. But I kind of want to look at the SPL as a whole from what we've seen over the last, I guess, 2 weeks or week and 2 days, I suppose. What's it going to take for us to get a 3-game set in here, Mifflin? It feels like a lot of these games we go into and we're like, all right, these are 2 super closely matched teams. But it just seems like whatever team gets the momentum from game 1 has been able to push that through into game 2.
I mean, I've been preaching since day one of SMITE that it truly is a momentum-based game. It's so easy to get in your own head, especially in long, drawn-out matches, that it is hard to get yourself back into it. However, I think as the weeks go on, all these teams are going to become more adept at reading the other teams. They're going to know more what they're looking for, and then we might see some more competitive 3-game sets. It's really a matter of time for people to figure out what they're looking for.
A little bit more balance here in the standings. Sanguine and Radiance, after 2 games for every single team in the league, stand tall in that 1-2 spot. Renegades and Obey looking for their first wins, and everyone else somewhere in the middle. Both teams that suffered losses today back in action tomorrow, and the road, I don't think, gets any easier for either team, Mifflin. Renegades immediately up against E United, and Obey in the tied for top seed going up against Radiance. That's going to be a couple tough matchups for teams still searching for win number 1.
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to Obey. Playing against Radiance is going to be so difficult. It's such a dominant team, but there are plenty of good sets to come, and I imagine we're going to see a lot more from each one of these players. It's still so early in the league, it's hard to really say who's going to be coming out on top.
I mean, you look at maybe those matchups tomorrow. Do you think E United Renegades then has the highest potential for upset between a team that's kind of 1-1 in E United and 0-2 there for the Renegades?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Renegades, every set we've seen them play, they haven't won, but they've looked incredibly convincingly good. I mean, Barracuda's playing so lights out this entire season, as is Lazra. I mean, I can't take a single thing away from Lazra. He's been playing so well. It's only a matter of time until they find a win. Whether or not it's going to be against E United is yet to be seen.
I agree. I wonder if it's possible, though, that E United, the last time we saw them, of course, yesterday, fall 0-2 to Radiance. I wonder if that kind of carries over into tomorrow, Mifflin, if there's, maybe counter momentum as well. But I do like the question Finch brought up with the Knights there in the post-game interview. How much pressure was there to kind of win this next game? I think a lot of teams are starting to realize that we're still early in the split, early in the season. There's plenty of time to kind of make up ground. So I think Renegades, of course, searching for that first win. But I don't think it's necessarily looming large over their head and weighing them down all that extra.
I mean, the longer you go without a win, the more hungry you're going to be for it. And I think maybe a little bit of that stress could add on to the fact that you might make some misplays. You might go for some wacky ends. I mean, we saw even this week, Renegades made some questionable calls when they were leagues ahead in their draft, in the gold, in the state of the game, and maybe they were a little bit too trigger happy trying to pull that win off. So maybe it does play into their mentality just a little bit. But I think it is a good mentality to have, just to acknowledge the fact that we are so early on in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I have, I think, high hopes for Obey moving into tomorrow. Obviously tough to go back-to-back immediately into Radiance, but they can build on some of the strong that we saw today, maybe stand a fighting chance against the undefeated team at the top of the standings. That's all we've got for you, though, in SPL Season 7, Week 2, Day number 2. We've got a full day of SMITE for you tomorrow, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you tune in. On behalf of myself, Mifflin, everyone back in production, all the other casters, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.